What if I told you that Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato accidentally discovered the ultimate insomnia cure? These 100 unsolvable mysteries have been putting deep thinkers to sleep for over 2,000 years. The twist? Your overthinking mind finally shuts down when it realizes there's literally nothing to figure out. Look around you right now. Your phone, the chair you're sitting on, the air you're breathing, even your own thoughts racing through your head. All of it exists. But here's the thing that keeps philosophers awake at night and scientists scratching their heads. Nobody can give you a rock-solid answer for why any of this stuff is here in the first place. We're talking about the biggest question humans have ever asked. Not what should I have for lunch, or why did my crush leave me on read. We're talking about why there's a universe at all, instead of just nothing. Complete emptiness. Void. Zero. Zip. Nada. The most popular scientific answer these days is the Big Bang Theory. About 13.8 billion years ago, everything that exists today was supposedly crammed into a space smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. Then boom, it exploded outward, creating space, time, matter, energy, and eventually your morning coffee. Sounds pretty wild, right? Well, it gets weirder. Scientists can trace this story backward almost to the very beginning, but they hit a wall. They can't tell you what caused the Big Bang or what existed before it. Some say before doesn't even make sense, because time itself started with the explosion. Then there's the God angle. Billions of people across thousands of years have looked at the complexity of existence and concluded that some divine force must have created it all. Ancient Greeks had their gods. Christians, Muslims, and Jews point to their versions of an all-powerful creator. Hindus talk about cycles of creation and destruction that go on forever. Indigenous cultures worldwide have their own creation stories involving everything from cosmic eggs to dancing spirits. The specifics vary dramatically, but the basic idea stays the same. Something bigger than us made all of this happen. But here's where it gets really mind-bending. Some philosophers flip the whole question upside down. Instead of asking why is there something, they ask why would there be nothing? Maybe existence is the default state. Maybe nothingness is actually the weird, impossible option. After all, can you really imagine absolute nothingness? Not darkness, because darkness is still something. Not empty space, because space itself is something. True nothingness would mean no thoughts to think about nothingness, no space for nothingness to exist in, no time for nothingness to last through. Let's not forget the multiverse crowd. These scientists and theorists suggest our universe might be just one bubble in an infinite foam of universes. Some of these other universes might have completely different laws of physics. Others might be almost identical to ours, but with tiny differences, like a version where you wore a red shirt today instead of blue. If infinite universes exist, then maybe the question isn't why does our universe exist, but with infinite possibilities, how could some universe not exist? Then there are the simulation theorists. They argue we might all be living inside some advanced civilization's computer program, like characters in the most sophisticated video game ever created. If that's true, then our something isn't really something at all. It's just code running on hardware in some higher reality we can't access. Ancient Greek philosophers had their own wild ideas. Some believed everything was made of tiny, indestructible particles called atoms. Others thought reality was just an illusion, and that only pure ideas were truly real. A few suggested that everything we see is just shadows cast on a cave wall, and true reality exists somewhere else entirely. Modern quantum physics throws another curveball into the mix. Scientists have discovered that even in the emptiest regions of space, particles randomly pop into existence and disappear again. Virtual particles bubble up from nothingness, exist for impossibly brief moments, then vanish. Maybe the entire universe started as one of these quantum fluctuations that just happened to stick around and grow. The honest truth that drives everyone crazy: we might never know the real answer. Every explanation leads to more questions. If God created everything, who created God? If the Big Bang started it all, what triggered the Big Bang? If we're in a simulation, who programmed the programmers? If multiple universes exist, what contains all of them? What makes this question so fascinating is that everybody has to deal with it, whether they realize it or not. Religious people, atheists, scientists, artists, kids, adults, we're all floating on this rock through space, surrounded by billions of stars and galaxies, participating in existence without really understanding why we get to participate at all. The question haunts us because it touches something fundamental about being human. We're conscious beings who can step back and wonder about our own existence. That's pretty remarkable when you think about it. But knowing we exist doesn't solve the mystery of why anything exists. Speaking of mysteries, there's another puzzle that's just as tricky. Can we actually trust what our senses tell us about this existence we're trying to understand? Your eyes tell you the world is one way. Your friend's eyes tell them something completely different. Who's right? Well, that's where things get messy. Take color blindness. Roughly 8% of men can't distinguish between red and green. They're not broken or wrong. They're just seeing a different version of reality than you are. Their brain processes light differently. So when you both look at a strawberry, you might see bright red while they see brownish green. Which color is the strawberry really? The question doesn't even make sense anymore. But here's where it gets weirder. Even people with normal vision don't see the same thing. Scientists have discovered that some women have 4 types of color receptors instead of the usual 3. They can see millions more colors than the rest of us. Imagine trying to describe a color that doesn't exist in someone else's world. That's their daily reality. Dreams mess with this whole trust your senses idea even more. Last night, you might have had a conversation with your dead grandmother, flown over your hometown, or found yourself back in high school taking a test you forgot to study for. While dreaming, it felt completely real. Your brain fired the same neurons, released the same chemicals, processed the same emotions as if it were actually happening. The scary part? Sometimes people can't tell the difference even after they wake up. False memories from dreams get mixed in with real experiences. Your brain files them in the same mental folder. So if dreams can fool you so completely, how do you know you're not dreaming right now? Then there are optical illusions, which basically exist to make your brain look stupid. You've seen them: lines that appear different lengths but measure exactly the same, still images that seem to move, faces that flip between young and old women. Your eyes send the same signal to your brain, but your brain interprets it differently depending on what it expects to see. The dress that broke the internet in 2015 proves this perfectly. Some people saw blue and black, others saw white and gold. Same photo, same pixels, completely different experiences. Scientists figured out it had to do with how your brain guesses what kind of lighting the photo was taken in. Your brain makes assumptions, then shows you what it thinks you should see. Sneaky, right? Technology reveals just how limited our senses really are. Dogs hear sounds we can't. Snakes see heat signatures. Bees see ultraviolet patterns on flowers that are invisible to us. We needed to invent special cameras to discover that reindeer have glowing eyes under UV light, or that flowers have landing strips for insects that we never noticed. X-rays show us bones inside bodies. Microscopes reveal entire worlds living on our skin. Telescopes find galaxies billions of light years away. Radio waves fill the air around you right now, carrying conversations, music, and data, but you can't sense any of it without the right equipment. We're basically walking around half blind and half deaf compared to what's actually happening. Ancient philosophers saw this problem coming. Plato talked about people chained in a cave, watching shadows on the wall and thinking that's all there is to reality. He wasn't being dramatic. He was pointing out that our senses might only show us a tiny slice of what's really out there. René Descartes took it even further. He wondered if an evil demon could be feeding him false sensations, making him think he had a body, think he was sitting by a fire, think he was holding a piece of paper. How would he ever know? His solution was to doubt everything except the fact that he was thinking. I think, therefore I am, became his only certainty. Modern neuroscience backs up these old worries. Your brain doesn't just passively receive information from your senses, it actively constructs your reality. It fills in blind spots, smooths out jerky eye movements, and edits out the times you blink. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing your brain's best guess about what's probably out there. People who've had strokes sometimes lose the ability to see the left side of everything. They'll eat only the right side of their plate, shave only the right side of their face, and draw clock faces with all the numbers crammed onto the right side, but they don't know anything's missing. Their brain simply doesn't process that information anymore. Hallucinations show how far this can go. People with certain conditions see, hear, or feel things that aren't there at all. Their senses seem to be working perfectly. They can describe in detail what they're experiencing, but the rest of us can't see it. The question isn't whether your senses lie to you occasionally. They do, constantly. The real question is whether you can ever know when they're telling the truth. And that leads us somewhere even stranger, wondering what reality actually means in the first place. Look around you right now. The chair you're sitting on, the screen you're staring at, maybe the coffee getting cold beside you. All of this feels absolutely undeniably real. Your brain processes the weight, the colors, the textures, but here's the thing that keeps philosophers awake at night. What if none of it actually exists the way you think it does? We've already talked about how our senses can fool us. Well, that opens up an even bigger can of worms. If we can't trust what we see, hear, or touch, then what exactly is real? This question has been messing with human minds for thousands of years, and modern science has only made it weirder. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato had this wild idea called the cave allegory. Imagine prisoners chained in a cave, watching shadows on the wall. They think the shadows are reality itself. Then one prisoner breaks free and discovers the shadows are just projections of real objects. Makes you wonder, are we the prisoners? Are we staring at shadows while reality happens somewhere else entirely? Fast forward to today, and things get even stranger. Quantum physics, the study of really tiny particles, shows us that matter doesn't behave the way we expect. Electrons can be in two places at once. Particles act like waves until someone observes them, then they snap back to being particles. It's like reality is playing a cosmic game of peekaboo. Then there's the simulation hypothesis. Tech billionaire Elon Musk famously said the odds we're living in base reality are billions to one. Think about it. Video games keep getting more realistic. Virtual reality gets more convincing every year. If technology keeps advancing, eventually simulated worlds will be indistinguishable from the real thing. And if advanced civilizations can run millions of simulations, statistically speaking, we're probably in one of them right now, rather than the original reality. But here's where it gets really trippy. French philosopher René Descartes tried to doubt everything he could possibly doubt. Maybe an evil demon was tricking him into believing false things. Maybe nothing existed at all, but he realized there was one thing he couldn't doubt. The fact that he was doubting. I think, therefore I am, he declared. Even if everything else is fake, something must exist to do the thinking. Yet even that certainty gets shaky when you dig deeper. Your thoughts feel private and personal, but neuroscientists can now watch your brain activity and predict what you're thinking before you're consciously aware of it yourself. Some researchers argue consciousness might be an illusion, just the brain telling stories about what it's doing. Meanwhile, physics keeps discovering that what seems solid is mostly empty space. Atoms are tiny nuclei surrounded by electrons zipping around in vast emptiness. If you could remove all the empty space from every human on Earth, we'd fit into a sugar cube. The solid matter you're touching right now is really electromagnetic forces pushing against each other. Nothing is actually touching anything else. Different cultures have tackled this reality question in fascinating ways. Hindu philosophy talks about Maya, the idea that the physical world is an illusion hiding deeper truth. Buddhist traditions suggest that attachment to the idea of permanent solid reality causes suffering. Indigenous shamans have long claimed that dreams and visions can be more real than waking life. Scientists studying consciousness run into the same puzzles. They can map every neuron firing in your brain, but they still can't explain why there's a subjective experience of what it's like to be you. Why should there be anything it feels like to see red or taste chocolate? A computer might process the same information without any inner experience at all. The weird thing about the reality question is that it might not even matter for daily life. Whether you're in a simulation, a dream, or base reality, you still need to eat, sleep, and pay bills. The experience feels the same either way, but the question changes how you think about everything else. Some philosophers argue we're asking the wrong question entirely. Instead of what is real, maybe we should ask, what's useful? If something affects your experience, and you can interact with it consistently, does it matter whether it's really real in some ultimate sense? Your relationships, your goals, your emotions, they shape your life regardless of the fundamental nature of reality. Modern technology keeps blurring these lines further. Augmented reality overlays digital information on the physical world. Virtual reality creates convincing alternate spaces. Social media creates shared experiences that exist only as data on servers, yet they influence real-world politics and relationships. The more we learn about reality, the more questions pop up. But there's something almost beautiful about the mystery. We're conscious beings asking questions about consciousness itself. We're using potentially illusory brains to wonder whether anything exists at all. Speaking of brains and questions about what they can and can't do, there's another puzzle that might shake up everything you think you know about choice and control. Every morning you wake up and decide what to wear. You choose coffee or tea. You pick which route to take to school or work. These feel like genuine choices, right? Well, neuroscientists have been poking around in our brains with fancy equipment, and they've discovered something pretty unsettling. Back in the 1980s, a researcher named Benjamin Libet hooked people up to brain scanning machines and asked them to move their hand whenever they felt like it. Simple enough, but here's where it gets weird. The machines detected brain activity, the actual decision to move, several hundred milliseconds before people reported feeling like they chose to move. Their brains had already decided before they consciously knew about it. More recent studies pushed this timeline even further. Some researchers can predict what you'll choose up to 10 seconds before you think you've made the decision. 10 whole seconds. That's enough time to tie your shoes or count to 10. Your brain apparently knows what it wants before you do. This creates a massive problem for our sense of free will. If our brains are making choices before we're aware of them, are we really choosing anything? Or are we just passengers in our own bodies, watching decisions unfold and taking credit after the fact? Then there's the physics angle, which gets even more troubling. Everything in the universe follows physical laws. Your brain is made of atoms, and atoms follow the rules of chemistry and physics. When you decide to raise your hand, that decision comes from neurons firing in specific patterns. Those neurons fire because of chemical reactions. Those chemical reactions happen because of the laws of physics. Following this logic, everything you'll ever do was technically determined the moment the universe began. The Big Bang set all the particles in motion, and they've been following predictable paths ever since. Your decision to eat pizza tonight, that was locked in 13.8 billion years ago when the first atoms started bouncing around. Some philosophers call this hard determinism. It suggests free will is just an illusion, a story we tell ourselves because we can't see all the invisible forces pushing us around. We feel free because we don't notice the millions of tiny influences shaping our thoughts, our genes, our childhood experiences, the temperature of the room, what we had for breakfast, the last movie we watched. But hold on, most people aren't buying this explanation, and for good reason. We still hold people responsible for their actions every single day. Courts sentence criminals to prison. Parents ground their kids for bad behavior. We praise heroes and blame villains. If everything is predetermined, why bother with any of this? Why try to change anything, if the outcome is already set? Some religious traditions add another layer to this puzzle. Many believe in fate or divine will, the idea that God or the universe has a plan for everyone. Others emphasize personal responsibility and the power to choose between good and evil. Christianity talks about free will as a gift from God, while some interpretations of Islam stress that Allah knows everything that will happen, creating tension between divine knowledge and human choice. Buddhism presents yet another perspective. It suggests that our sense of a choosing self might be the real illusion. If there's no fixed self making decisions, then maybe the question of free will doesn't even make sense. Here's where things get really interesting though. Even if our brains start the decision-making process unconsciously, we might still have free won't, the ability to veto bad choices at the last second. You might automatically start reaching for that third slice of cake, but you can still stop yourself. Your brain might begin forming the words for a cruel insult, but you can choose not to say them. Quantum mechanics throws another wrench into the works. At the tiniest scales, particles behave randomly, not predictably. Some argue this quantum randomness could create room for free will, though randomness isn't quite the same as freedom. A coin flip isn't free, it's just unpredictable. The strangest part might be that this debate changes how we act. Studies show that people who believe less in free will tend to behave less ethically, they cheat more, help others less, and take less responsibility for their mistakes. Maybe believing in free will, whether it exists or not, actually makes us more free. We're left with a paradox. Science suggests our choices might be illusions, but we can't live as if that's true. We keep making decisions, taking responsibility, and trying to shape our futures. Whether that's because we truly have free will, or because evolution programmed us to feel like we do, remains one of the biggest mysteries of human existence. Speaking of mysteries, there's another question that has divided humanity for thousands of years, one that might determine how we answer the free will puzzle entirely. Billions of people around the world wake up every morning with absolute certainty that God exists. Meanwhile, billions of others go to sleep each night equally convinced there's no divine being anywhere in the universe. That's quite a split for something so fundamental. The strange thing is, both sides often claim they have evidence. Believers point to the complexity of life, the vastness of space, and those moments when everything feels connected. Non-believers counter with evolution, natural laws, and the fact that bad things happen to good people. Yet after thousands of years of debate, nobody has produced a smoking gun either way. Ancient philosophers tried to logic their way to God. Aristotle argued there must be a first mover, something that started everything else moving without being moved itself. Thomas Aquinas later expanded this idea, claiming the universe needed a cause, and that cause was God. But here's the catch: if everything needs a cause, what caused God? The usual answer is that God doesn't need a cause because God is eternal and perfect. Critics find this convenient. Then there's the argument from design. Look at a watch, and you know someone made it because it's too complex to happen by accident. Look at an eye, a flower, or a human brain. Surely these require a designer too. Charles Darwin threw a wrench into this reasoning when he showed how natural selection could create complexity without any designer at all. But some people still see God's hand in the process itself. Personal experiences complicate things further. Millions of people report feeling God's presence during prayer, meditation, or life-changing moments. They describe peace that surpasses understanding, answered prayers, or miraculous recoveries from illness. These experiences feel absolutely real to those who have them. Skeptics suggest the brain can create powerful feelings and coincidences happen more often than we think. Different cultures have worshipped thousands of different gods throughout history. The ancient Greeks had Zeus and his quarreling family. Hindus recognize multiple deities representing different aspects of existence. Muslims, Christians, and Jews worship the same God but disagree about the details. Indigenous cultures often see spirits in nature itself. If God exists, why so many versions of the story? Some modern thinkers try to split the difference. They argue that while we can't prove God exists, we also can't prove God doesn't exist. This agnostic position basically says, I don't know, and maybe nobody can know. It's intellectually honest but doesn't satisfy people who crave certainty either way. Science has changed the conversation dramatically. We now know the universe is about 14 billion years old, not a few thousand. We understand how stars form, how planets develop, and how life evolves. Does this leave room for God, or does it explain everything without needing divine intervention? Scientists themselves disagree. Some see God in the elegant mathematical laws that govern reality. Others see only natural processes all the way down. The problem of evil creates another puzzle. If God is all-powerful and all-good, why do children suffer from cancer? Why do earthquakes kill innocent people? Why doesn't God stop wars and famines? Believers offer various explanations. Free will means God allows humans to make bad choices, suffering builds character, or we simply can't understand God's plan from our limited perspective. Critics find these answers unsatisfying when faced with genuine tragedy. But here's something interesting. Even in societies that officially reject religion, people often create substitute belief systems. Communism promised a perfect future society. Some people treat science itself like a religion. Others find meaning in nationalism, environmentalism, or personal success. Humans seem wired to seek something greater than themselves, whether they call it God or not. Near-death experiences add another layer of mystery. People who clinically die and return sometimes report traveling through tunnels of light, meeting deceased relatives, or feeling overwhelming love. These experiences happen across different cultures and religions. Are they glimpses of an afterlife, or just the brain's way of shutting down? The jury is still out. Prayer presents its own fascinating questions. Studies have tried to measure whether prayer actually works by testing if patients who are prayed for recover faster from surgery. Results are mixed and controversial, but millions of people continue praying because it provides comfort, clarity, or connection to something beyond themselves. Religious texts offer another type of evidence that believers and skeptics interpret differently. Ancient books describe miraculous events, prophetic visions, and moral teachings that have guided civilizations for millennia. Are these inspired by God or written by humans trying to make sense of their world? The same passages can support radically different conclusions. Maybe the most honest answer is that the God question reveals something important about human nature itself. We're creatures who wonder about our origins, search for meaning, and long for connection. Whether that points to God's existence or simply explains why we invented the concept remains one of the biggest mysteries we face. Speaking of mysteries, there's another puzzle that's equally personal yet universal: The strange phenomenon happening inside your head right now, as you read these words. Right now you're aware that you exist. You're reading these words, thinking thoughts, maybe feeling curious or confused. But here's the mind-bending question that has stumped philosophers and scientists for centuries. How do you know anyone else has this same inner experience? When your friend says they're happy or sad, are they really feeling something inside, or are they just biological robots going through the motions? This is called the problem of other minds, and it's way weirder than it sounds. You can never peek inside someone else's head to see if their experience of seeing red is the same as yours. Maybe what you call red looks like what they would call blue, but they learned to call it red because that's what everyone taught them. There's literally no way to check. Your brain weighs about 3 pounds and looks like a wrinkled walnut. Somehow this mushy organ creates your entire inner world, your memories of childhood, the taste of pizza, the feeling of being embarrassed. Scientists can watch brain scans light up when you think about your grandmother, but they can't measure the actual experience of remembering her laugh. The physical activity is there, but where exactly is the you that experiences it? Neuroscientists have been searching for what they call the seat of consciousness for decades. They've found brain regions that control memory, language and movement, but consciousness seems to pop up everywhere and nowhere at once. It's like trying to find the exact spot where a song exists in your phone. The data is spread across the device, but the song itself only exists when it all comes together. Then there's the hard problem of consciousness, which sounds like a physics exam, but is actually much trickier. We can explain how brains process information, store memories, and control behavior. That's the easy stuff, believe it or not. The hard part is explaining why any of this feels like anything at all. Why isn't your brain just processing data in the dark, like a really sophisticated computer? Speaking of computers, artificial intelligence keeps getting smarter. ChatGPT can write poems, solve math problems, and even crack jokes. But does it actually experience the satisfaction of solving a puzzle or finding something funny? Most experts say no, it's just pattern matching on a massive scale. But how would we ever know for sure? If an AI claimed to feel lonely or excited, what test could prove it's lying? Philosopher Thomas Nagel asked one of the most famous questions in consciousness research. What is it like to be a bat? Bats navigate using echolocation, bouncing sound waves off objects to see their surroundings. Even if we understand the physics perfectly, we can never know what it actually feels like to experience the world through sound. Their conscious experience is locked away from us forever. Some scientists think consciousness is an illusion, that there's no real you experiencing things, just a brain creating the story of a unified self. Others believe consciousness is the most fundamental feature of the universe, that even electrons might have tiny bits of experience. Both ideas sound crazy, which tells you how far we are from solving this puzzle. The really unsettling part? You might be the only conscious being in existence, and everyone else could be philosophical zombies, creatures that act conscious but have no inner experience at all. Your family, friends, favorite celebrities, all potentially empty inside, just biological machines following their programming. This scenario is impossible to disprove, which is either fascinating or terrifying depending on your mood. But wait, there's more strangeness. Split brain patients, people who've had the connection between their brain hemispheres severed, sometimes act like they have two separate consciousnesses sharing one skull. The left brain might choose a red card while the right brain prefers blue, and neither side knows why the other is acting differently. Which side is the real person? Memory adds another layer of confusion. Your sense of being a continuous person depends on remembering your past, but memories are notoriously unreliable. Every time you remember something, your brain reconstructs it slightly differently. The you from 5 years ago had different cells, different thoughts and different memories. Are you the same person, or just someone who inherited another person's story? Even your sense of free will might be an illusion created by consciousness. Scientists can sometimes predict your decisions by watching brain activity before you're aware of choosing anything. Your conscious mind might just be along for the ride, creating explanations for decisions that were already made unconsciously. We can map every neuron, measure every chemical reaction, and track every electrical signal in the brain. But consciousness remains as mysterious as ever, the thing that makes you you instead of just another chunk of organized matter. It's the ultimate inside job, and we're all stuck on the outside looking in. While consciousness stays puzzling, there's another question that's divided humanity for thousands of years, and shows no signs of resolution anytime soon. Here's something that might blow your mind. There's no cosmic rulebook floating around space telling us what's right and wrong. Yet somehow, Billions of people wake up every day with strong opinions about good and bad, weird, right? Take lying for example. Most cultures agree it's generally bad, but then you meet the Dutch, who are famous for their brutal honesty, and suddenly what Americans call polite looks like deception. Meanwhile, in some Asian cultures, saving face is so important that white lies become acts of kindness. Same action, completely different moral judgment. Well, it gets stranger. The Inuit people traditionally had a practice where elderly members would walk into the snow to die when resources got scarce. Sounds horrific to us, but they saw it as noble sacrifice for the tribe's survival. Ancient Spartans left weak babies on mountainsides. Vikings celebrated dying in battle. Each group thought they were doing the right thing. But here's where your brain starts to hurt. If morals are just cultural opinions, why does reading about those practices make you feel genuinely uncomfortable? Something inside you rebels against certain actions regardless of what society says. That gut reaction suggests maybe some moral truths exist beyond human invention. Then there's the science problem. We can measure temperature, speed and weight with instruments. But try measuring kindness with a ruler, or fairness with a scale. Good luck with that. Morality seems to live in a different dimension than physical facts. Scientists can tell you exactly how a bomb works, but they can't tell you whether dropping it is right or wrong. Let's not forget how moral rules crash into each other like bumper cars. Don't lie. Sounds simple until your friend asks if their terrible haircut looks good. Don't kill. Seems obvious until someone breaks into your house threatening your family. Help others makes sense until helping one person means hurting another. Real life loves forcing impossible choices. And the weird part is how passionate people get about their moral beliefs. Mention abortion, animal rights, or the death penalty at a dinner party and watch the fireworks. People don't just disagree, they act like the other side is morally blind. Yet both sides often use the same basic principles like fairness and reducing suffering. They just apply them differently. Consider this mind bender. Some philosophers argue that moral facts might be as real as mathematical facts. 2 + 2 = 4, whether humans believe it or not. Maybe torturing innocents for fun is wrong, is equally true, regardless of opinion. The challenge is proving it without circular reasoning. Meanwhile, other thinkers go the opposite direction. They claim morals are evolutionary accidents, useful lies our brains tell us to help groups survive. Cooperation helped early humans thrive, so we evolved to feel good about sharing and bad about stealing. What feels like cosmic justice might just be ancient programming. But wait, there's more weirdness. Psychologists discovered that people make moral judgments lightning fast, then invent reasons afterward. Show someone a disgusting but harmless act, like cleaning a toilet with the national flag, and they'll call it wrong before they can explain why. Our moral compass points somewhere, but we're often clueless about the magnetic field. Different moral systems don't even agree on what matters most. Some focus on rules, lying is always wrong, period. Others care about consequences, lie if it saves lives. Still others emphasize character, what would a good person do? And some prioritize care and relationships over abstract principles. Pick your favorite flavor of ethics. The really twisted part: most people mix all these approaches without realizing it. You might follow strict rules about honesty, but make exceptions for protecting feelings. You care about good outcomes, but also believe some actions are inherently wrong. You want to be virtuous but also practical. Your moral system is probably held together with philosophical duct tape. Religious folks often claim their holy books solve everything, but even they disagree constantly. Christians debate war, poverty and sexuality using the same Bible. Muslims interpret the Quran differently across cultures. Buddhists argue about what causes suffering. Having a divine source doesn't eliminate human interpretation. Young children add another puzzle piece. They seem to grasp fairness before anyone teaches them formal rules. 3-year-olds get upset about unfair treatment, even when it doesn't affect them personally. Either we're born with moral intuitions, or we learn them incredibly fast from social cues nobody notices. Modern technology keeps creating new moral dilemmas faster than philosophy can handle them. Should we edit human genes? Can artificial intelligence be held responsible for decisions? Is it wrong to manipulate people's emotions through social media algorithms? Our ancient moral systems struggle with 21st century problems. Maybe that's why moral questions never get solved permanently. Each generation faces new situations that test old principles. What seems obviously right today might horrify people in 100 years, just like slavery horrifies us now but seemed normal to previous centuries. Speaking of things that seem normal until you really examine them, have you ever wondered what it actually means to know something? Think about the last time someone asked you a simple question like what's your favorite color? You probably answered without hesitation. Blue, maybe red, or green. But here's the thing, did you actually know your favorite color, or did you just think you knew it? What if tomorrow you see a sunset that makes you completely rethink everything? Suddenly what you knew becomes questionable. Knowledge feels solid until you poke at it. We walk around every day claiming to know thousands of things. Your name, where you live, what pizza tastes like, how to ride a bike. But philosophers have spent centuries asking a deceptively simple question: what does it actually mean to know something? Most people think knowledge is just having the right information. You know that Paris is the capital of France because someone told you, right? Well, not so fast. What if that person was wrong? What if you misheard them? What if Paris suddenly stopped being the capital tomorrow? The ancient Greeks realized this problem early on. They said true knowledge requires three things. The statement must be true, you must believe it, and you must have good reason to believe it. Sounds reasonable enough. But then philosophers started picking this apart, like kids with a loose thread on a sweater. Take Edmund Gettier, who in 1963 completely wrecked this tidy definition with some mind-bending examples. Imagine you see your friend driving a red Ford. You form the belief, my friend owns a Ford. Later you discover your friend was actually driving a rental car that day. But coincidentally, he does own a different Ford parked in his garage. Were you right or wrong? You had true belief with seemingly good evidence, but it was all based on a misunderstanding. Then there's the problem of memory. You know what you had for breakfast this morning, but neuroscientists have shown that memories change every time we recall them. Each time you remember something, your brain essentially rewrites the file. So that crystal clear memory of your childhood birthday party, it might be more fiction than fact by now. Makes you wonder what else you think you know that's actually just your brain playing creative writer. The internet has made this whole mess even weirder. People now claim to know things they read on Wikipedia 5 minutes ago. Others insist they know the Earth is flat because they watched a YouTube video. Meanwhile, actual experts who spent decades studying their fields get dismissed as biased. We've created a world where access to information gets confused with actual knowledge, and confidence often trumps expertise. But here's where it gets really twisted. Some of the most important things we know can't be proven at all. You know that other people have thoughts and feelings, but you can't actually verify this. You've never experienced someone else's consciousness. For all you technically know, everyone around you could be sophisticated robots with no inner experience whatsoever. Creepy thought, but logically possible. Scientists face this problem constantly. They don't really know that gravity will work the same way tomorrow as it did today. They just have really strong evidence that it will, based on patterns they've observed. But evidence isn't the same as certainty. Every scientific fact comes with invisible fine print. This is our best understanding right now, subject to change when new evidence appears. Mathematical knowledge seems more solid. 2 + 2 = 4, period. But even mathematicians start with assumptions, axioms, that they can't prove. They just accept them as starting points and build from there. It's like constructing a magnificent castle on a foundation you never bothered to inspect. Language makes everything more complicated. When you say you know chocolate tastes good, what exactly does that mean? Taste is subjective. You're really saying my brain interprets the chemical compounds in chocolate as pleasant. But we use the word know, as if chocolate's goodness is a universal truth carved in stone somewhere. The strangest part might be how little this uncertainty affects daily life. People navigate the world just fine without absolute certainty about anything. You don't spend 10 minutes questioning whether chairs exist before sitting down. You don't verify the laws of physics before walking out the door. Practical knowledge, knowing how to do things, seems different from theoretical knowledge somehow. Indigenous cultures often have completely different approaches to knowledge. Many emphasize experiential learning, storytelling, and collective wisdom rather than individual facts. They might say you don't truly know a river until you've spent years observing its moods, seasons, and rhythms. Book learning about water flow rates seems shallow by comparison. Children ask how do you know, constantly until adults get exhausted and say because I said so. But maybe kids are onto something. They haven't yet learned to stop questioning the foundations of everything. They instinctively understand that knowledge is stranger and more fragile than it appears. Philosophy has been wrestling with these questions for thousands of years without reaching any final answers, which raises an interesting possibility. Maybe some questions can't be definitively answered at all. Mathematics loves absolute proof. 2 plus 2 equals 4, always. The Pythagorean theorem works every single time. Mathematicians build their entire world on logical steps that nobody can argue with. But step outside that pristine mathematical universe, and proof becomes a slippery fish that nobody can quite catch. Scientists don't actually prove theories the way most people think. They gather evidence, lots of it, then more evidence. Einstein's theory of relativity has passed thousands of tests, but technically it could still be wrong. Tomorrow some experiment might show a crack in our understanding. That's how science works. It builds confidence, not absolute certainty. Newton's laws ruled physics for centuries. Everyone knew they were correct. Then Einstein showed up and turned everything sideways. Suddenly time could stretch and space could bend. What seemed ironclad wasn't so ironclad after all. Scientific proof is really more like the best explanation we have right now. Courtrooms handle proof completely differently. Lawyers present evidence, witnesses testify, and juries decide what beyond reasonable doubt means. But legal proof changes depending on the case. Sometimes DNA evidence gets someone convicted. Other times that same DNA evidence gets them freed years later when testing improves. The proof didn't change. Our ability to understand it did. Then there's the famous philosopher René Descartes, who decided to doubt absolutely everything he could possibly doubt. Could he be dreaming? Maybe. Could an evil demon be tricking his senses? Possibly. Could math itself be wrong? Well, that's getting weird, but theoretically yes. After doubting everything, he found one thing he couldn't doubt, that he was thinking. I think therefore I am became his starting point. But even that tiny piece of proof gets challenged by modern philosophers. The funny thing about absolute certainty is how rarely we actually need it. You can't prove your friends really care about you, but you act like they do anyway. Nobody can prove tomorrow will come. But people keep making plans. We live comfortably with uncertainty, most of the time. Religious believers often claim they have proof of God's existence. They point to personal experiences, answered prayers, or the complexity of life itself. But skeptics demand different kinds of evidence. What counts as proof to one person means nothing to another. The gap between them isn't really about facts. It's about what kinds of evidence they trust. Logic puzzles create their own problems with proof. Take this statement: this sentence is false. If it's true, then it's false. If it's false, then it's true. Your brain ties itself in knots trying to figure it out. These paradoxes show that even careful reasoning can lead to impossible places. Eyewitness testimony used to be considered rock-solid proof in courtrooms. Now we know memory is unreliable. People genuinely believe they remember events that never happened. Their certainty feels absolute, but security camera footage tells different stories. What felt like proof turned out to be just confident confusion. Statistics make everything more complicated. Medical studies prove that certain treatments work, but only for a percentage of people. The proof comes with error bars and confidence intervals. It's proof with fine print attached. Ancient Greek mathematicians thought they had proved that all numbers could be written as fractions. Then someone discovered the square root of 2, which goes on forever without repeating. Their complete system had holes in it. Even mathematical proof sometimes needs updating. Computers are changing what proof means. They can check millions of cases that would take humans lifetimes to verify. But can a proof be valid if no human being can understand all the steps? Some mathematical theorems now require computer assistance to verify. We're trusting machines to handle proof that our minds can't process. The strangest part about demanding absolute proof is that it often stops progress instead of helping it. If scientists waited for complete certainty before acting, we'd still be debating whether germs cause disease. Sometimes good enough proof lets us move forward and learn more. Daily life runs on incomplete proof constantly. You can't prove the restaurant won't give you food poisoning, but you eat anyway. Traffic lights work on the assumption that most people will follow the rules, even though nobody can prove they will. Society functions because we accept reasonable evidence instead of demanding impossible certainty. But here's where things get really interesting. What happens when we can't even prove basic facts about existence itself? When the very nature of reality becomes questionable, and the line between what's real and what's imagined starts to blur. Nobody talks much about dying at dinner parties. It's not exactly cheerful conversation. But here's the thing. Every single person who's ever lived has wondered what happens when it's all over. Kings, peasants, scientists, your grandmother. Everyone gets curious about the ultimate mystery. The ancient Egyptians were so convinced there was something after death that they spent decades building massive pyramids. They filled these tombs with food, gold, and even servants for the afterlife journey. Imagine being so sure about what comes next that you dedicate your entire civilization's resources to preparing for it. These weren't people playing around. They had detailed maps of the underworld and instruction manuals for navigating death. Then there's the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which reads like a travel guide for the recently deceased. It gives step-by-step directions for what souls encounter after dying. Turn left at the bright light, avoid the scary demons, choose the right doorway. Pretty specific stuff for something nobody has ever come back to verify. But wait, some people claim they have returned with reports. Near-death experiences happen to thousands of people every year. They describe floating above their bodies, traveling through tunnels of light, meeting deceased relatives, or experiencing profound peace. Doctors find patients unconscious with no brain activity, yet these people later describe conversations happening in the room or events they couldn't possibly have witnessed. Scientists scratch their heads over this. The brain should be offline during these moments. How do people report such vivid, detailed experiences when their neurons aren't firing normally? Some researchers suggest oxygen deprivation creates hallucinations. Others think dying brain cells might trigger unusual electrical activity. Yet people who've had these experiences often say they felt more awake and aware than ever before in their lives. Different religions paint wildly different pictures of what awaits us. Christianity talks about heaven and hell, eternal reward, or punishment based on earthly behavior. Islam describes paradise with rivers of honey and milk. Hinduism suggests reincarnation, where souls get recycled into new bodies based on how well they lived previous lives. Buddhism aims for nirvana, which is basically escaping the cycle of rebirth entirely. Meanwhile, many scientists and philosophers lean toward a completely different view. When you die, that's it. Game over. No consciousness, no experience, no you left to experience anything. It's like before you were born, you weren't suffering from non-existence then, and you won't suffer from it after death either. This perspective treats consciousness like a flame on a candle. When the candle burns out, the flame doesn't go somewhere else. It simply stops existing. Your memories, personality, and sense of self are all products of brain activity. No brain, no mind. Simple as that, yet something feels unsatisfying about this explanation to many people. How can all those thoughts, memories, and experiences just vanish? It seems wasteful, almost insulting. You spend decades accumulating knowledge, building relationships, developing your personality, then poof, it all disappears forever. Some modern thinkers propose middle ground theories. Maybe consciousness isn't produced by the brain, but rather received by it, like a radio picks up signals. Death might be like breaking the radio. The signal continues, but you can't tune into it anymore. Others suggest quantum physics might preserve information about consciousness in ways we don't understand yet. The strangest part about death is that it remains the one experience every human shares, yet nobody can study it directly. You can't interview dead people. You can't run experiments on what it's like to be permanently dead. Scientists can study dying brains and document biological processes, but the subjective experience of being dead stays completely inaccessible. This creates a unique philosophical puzzle. We make decisions based on beliefs about death, whether to fear it, prepare for it, or ignore it entirely. Religious people might spend their whole lives following rules to ensure a good afterlife. Atheists might focus on making this life meaningful, since they believe it's the only one they get. Children often ask the most direct questions about death. Where do people go when they die? Parents stumble over answers, offering comfort without certainty. Nobody wants to tell a kid, "I have absolutely no idea," and neither does anyone else. The timing of death adds another layer of mystery. Some people die peacefully in their sleep at 90, others die suddenly at 20. If there's a plan or purpose behind death, it's not obvious what it might be. Random chance seems to play a huge role, which doesn't fit neatly with ideas about cosmic justice or divine planning. What makes this question even more fascinating is how it connects to almost every other big question about existence. If life began from mysterious origins, maybe death leads to equally mysterious destinations. The question of how life began might be the biggest mystery we've never solved. We're talking about the moment when lifeless chemicals somehow organized themselves into something that could eat, grow, and make copies of itself. That jump from chemistry to biology, nobody has figured it out completely. Scientists think it happened around 4 billion years ago on early Earth. Back then, our planet was nothing like the blue marble we see today. The atmosphere had no oxygen. Volcanic activity was constant. Lightning storms raged across seas filled with chemicals that would kill us instantly. Yet somehow in this hostile environment, the first spark of life ignited. The simplest explanation involves what researchers call primordial soup. Picture ancient oceans loaded with organic compounds, amino acids, sugars, and other molecular building blocks. Add energy from lightning, volcanic heat, or ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Stir for millions of years. Eventually these chemicals might have linked together into more complex molecules, including early versions of DNA and proteins. But here's where it gets tricky. Modern cells are incredibly sophisticated machines. Even the simplest bacteria today have thousands of different parts working in perfect coordination. How did such complexity arise from random chemical reactions? It's like expecting a tornado to sweep through a junkyard and accidentally assemble a working airplane. Some scientists propose that life began with RNA, not DNA. RNA can both store genetic information and speed up chemical reactions. This RNA world hypothesis suggests that early RNA molecules learned to copy themselves, with the best copiers gradually taking over. Over time, DNA evolved to store information more reliably, while proteins became the workhorses of cellular machinery. Then there's the metabolism first theory. Instead of focusing on genetic replication, this idea suggests life began with self-sustaining chemical networks. These reactions could have occurred in tiny pockets within rocks or around deep-sea volcanic vents. The chemistry was already running the show before genetics even showed up to the party. Speaking of deep-sea vents, many researchers now think these underwater hotspots were life's true birthplace. The vents spew hot, chemical-rich water that creates temperature gradients and provides energy for reactions. Some of the chemicals coming out of these vents are identical to what we find inside living cells today. Coincidence? Probably not. Other scientists aren't convinced life started on Earth at all. Panspermia, the idea that life came from space, has some serious supporters. Meteors and comets contain organic compounds. Mars might have been more hospitable to early life than Earth was. Maybe microscopic organisms hitchhiked across the solar system on space rocks, seeding multiple planets with the ingredients for biology. The weird part is that we keep finding life in places where it supposedly can't exist. Bacteria living in boiling hot springs, microorganisms thriving in Antarctica's frozen lakes, creatures that eat radiation instead of sunlight. Every time we discover life surviving in impossible conditions, it expands the possibilities for where and how life might have begun. Laboratory experiments have managed to create some of life's building blocks from scratch. In the 1950s, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey zapped a mixture of gases with electricity and produced amino acids, the components of proteins. More recent experiments have generated RNA building blocks, cell-like membranes, and even simple self-replicating molecules. But creating life's ingredients isn't the same as creating life itself. No laboratory has ever produced a truly living organism from non-living materials. That gap between chemistry and biology remains stubbornly wide. We can make the parts, but we can't make them come alive. Different cultures have always had their own explanations for life's origins. Ancient creation stories often involve gods breathing life into clay or bringing order to primordial chaos. These myths might seem primitive, but they're grappling with the same fundamental question that puzzles modern scientists. How did non-living matter become living? Even Charles Darwin, who explained how life evolved, admitted he had no clue how it started. He once suggested that life might have begun in some warm little pond, where the right chemicals could concentrate and react. Today's scientists are still testing variations of that warm little pond idea. What makes this mystery even deeper is that life apparently began only once on Earth. Every living thing, from bacteria to blue whales, shares the same basic genetic code and cellular machinery. If life were easy to start, we might expect it to have begun multiple times with different approaches. Instead, we seem to be descendants of a single successful experiment. New research keeps pushing the boundaries of what we know. Scientists are discovering that supposedly dead materials can sometimes organize themselves in surprisingly lifelike ways. Certain chemical reactions create patterns that grow, divide, and even compete for resources. Maybe the line between living and non-living isn't as sharp as we thought. The origin of life remains one of science's greatest unsolved puzzles, but it connects to another mind-bending question that stretches our understanding of reality itself. Numbers can stretch on forever without ever stopping. Take pi, 3.14159, and then keeps going with no pattern, no end, just endless digits marching into mathematical eternity. Your calculator gives up after a few decimal places, but pi doesn't care. It continues whether we can follow it or not. This creates a fascinating puzzle. Can something truly infinite exist in our physical world, or does infinity only live in the abstract realm of mathematics? Mathematicians work with infinity every day, like it's perfectly normal. They have symbols for it, equations that use it, and entire branches of math built around it. But here's where things get weird. There are actually different sizes of infinity. The mathematician George Cantor discovered this mind-bending fact in the 1800s. Some infinities are literally bigger than others, which sounds completely ridiculous until you dig into the math. The infinity of counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, is called countable infinity. Then there's the infinity of all decimal numbers between 0 and 1, which is uncountably infinite, and actually larger. Cantor proved this with an elegant argument that drove some of his contemporaries to question his sanity. The math worked though. Multiple infinities exist, stacked on top of each other like endless Russian dolls. But does any of this mathematical weirdness actually exist in reality? Consider space itself. Look up at the night sky, and you're staring into what might be an infinite expanse. Telescopes show us galaxies billions of light years away, but they can't show us an edge to the universe. Maybe space goes on forever in all directions. Maybe it curves back on itself like the surface of a sphere, making it finite but without boundaries. Nobody knows for sure. The strange part is that both possibilities mess with our brains. An infinite universe means you could travel in a straight line forever and never reach the end. A finite but boundless universe means you could travel in a straight line forever and eventually end up back where you started, like an ant walking around a ball. Then there's time. Did time have a beginning with the Big Bang, or has it been flowing forever? Will it continue endlessly into the future, or does it have some cosmic expiration date? Physics gives us equations that work with infinite time, but the reality remains stubbornly mysterious. Ancient philosophers wrestled with these same questions without modern math or telescopes. Zeno of Elea created famous paradoxes about infinity that still puzzle people today. His most famous involves a race between Achilles and a tortoise. The tortoise gets a head start, but Achilles runs faster. Zeno argued that Achilles can never actually overtake the tortoise, because he must first reach where the tortoise was, but by then the tortoise has moved a little further. This process continues infinitely, suggesting Achilles never catches up. Of course, in real life, Achilles easily wins the race. The paradox reveals the tricky relationship between mathematical infinity and physical reality. We can divide distance and time into infinitely small pieces on paper, but that doesn't mean the real world actually works that way. Modern physics suggests that space and time might not be infinitely divisible. At incredibly tiny scales, smaller than atoms, smaller than particles, space itself might be made of discrete chunks. The Planck length represents the smallest meaningful distance in physics. Below that scale, the very concept of distance breaks down. If this is true, then physical reality avoids the infinite subdivisions that create Zeno's paradox. Yet infinity keeps popping up in physics equations. Black holes are described as having infinite density at their centers. The Big Bang supposedly started from a point of infinite temperature and density. These singularities are places where our math produces infinity as an answer, which usually means we're missing something important about how the universe actually works. Scientists often treat these infinities as signals that their theories need improvement. When equations spit out infinity, it's like the universe saying try again. This suggests that physical infinity might be a mathematical convenience rather than a real thing. But what about the infinity inside our own heads? When you try to imagine endless space or eternal time, your brain eventually gives up. We can understand the concept of infinity without truly grasping it. This might be a fundamental limit of human consciousness. We're finite beings trying to comprehend the infinite. The question becomes even more puzzling when we consider whether our own existence involves infinity. If the universe is truly infinite and contains infinite matter arranged in infinite ways, then somewhere out there might be infinite copies of you, reading infinite versions of this exact text. Mathematics confidently manipulates infinite quantities, yet the physical universe might cleverly avoid them entirely. This tension between mathematical possibility and physical reality leads us to wonder about something equally mysterious, the very nature of time itself and whether it flows the way we think it does. What exactly is time? You check your phone, see 3:47 p.m., and somehow that collection of numbers tells you something meaningful about the universe. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Your phone isn't measuring time itself, it's just counting vibrations in a tiny quartz crystal. The crystal shakes 32,768 times per second, and we've all agreed to call that time. Pretty weird when you think about it. Einstein messed everything up in 1905 when he proved time isn't what we thought. Before him, everyone assumed time moved at the same speed everywhere. 1 second on Earth equals 1 second on Mars, right? Wrong. Turns out time speeds up and slows down depending on how fast you're moving and how strong gravity is around you. If you spent a year traveling at 99% the speed of light, only a few weeks would pass on Earth. Your friends would still be young while you aged normally. Physics is cruel like that. Then there's the brain problem. Your perception of time changes constantly, and you probably never noticed. Remember being 7 years old waiting for Christmas? Those last 3 days felt longer than entire months do now. That's because your brain processes time differently based on attention, emotion, and how much new stuff is happening. When you're bored, your brain has extra processing power to notice every tiny moment passing. When you're having fun, your brain gets distracted, and time seems to vanish. But why does time only move forward? You can walk backward, think about the past, even play movies in reverse. Yet time itself never goes the other direction. Eggs don't unscramble, dead people don't come back to life, spilled coffee doesn't jump back into the cup. This one-way flow puzzles physicists, because most equations in physics work perfectly fine in both directions. The math says time could run backward, but reality disagrees. Some scientists think time doesn't really exist at all. They argue it's just a useful illusion, created by our brains to make sense of change. When things move from one state to another, we call that time passing. But maybe there's no invisible river of time flowing through the universe. Maybe there's just stuff changing, and we invented time to describe it. Like how we invented the word blue to describe certain wavelengths of light. But the light itself isn't actually blue. Clocks make this even stranger. We trust them completely, but they're all just machines counting repetitive motions. Pendulum swings, gear rotations, electronic pulses. They're measuring change, not time itself. Ancient Egyptians used shadows on sundials. Romans used water flowing through holes. Modern atomic clocks count radiation from cesium atoms. All different methods, all supposedly measuring the same mysterious thing. Time travel gets everyone excited, and the frustrating truth is that it's theoretically possible, but practically impossible. Einstein showed you could travel to the future by going really fast or hanging out near a black hole. GPS satellites already do this. They experience time slightly faster than we do, because they're farther from Earth's gravity. Without adjusting for this effect, your GPS would be wrong by miles. So time travel happens constantly, just not the dramatic kind from movies. Going backward in time creates famous paradoxes. If you traveled back and prevented your parents from meeting, how could you exist to make the trip? Some physicists suggest parallel timelines where changes create new branches of reality. Others think the universe would somehow prevent paradoxes from happening. Still others argue that if backward time travel were possible, we'd already know because future time travelers would be everywhere. Different cultures experience time completely differently. Western societies treat time like money, something to save, spend and waste. Many indigenous cultures see time as circular, with events repeating in patterns. Some languages don't have words for past and future, the way English does. They describe events as happening now visible, or now invisible, instead. Their speakers literally think about time differently than you do. Dreams mess with time in impossible ways. You can experience hours of dream time in minutes of real sleep. Sometimes you dream about your alarm going off seconds before it actually rings, as if your brain predicted the future. Lucid dreamers report spending what feels like days in a single night's sleep, learning skills and having conversations that feel completely real. Physics suggests time might not be smooth like we imagine, but chunky like everything else at the smallest scales. There might be a shortest possible moment, a quantum of time lasting about 10 circumflex 43 seconds. Below that, the very idea of before and after breaks down completely. What makes this question so maddening is that we're trapped inside time trying to understand it. Fish probably can't understand water very well either. We experience every moment as now, but physics suggests now is just where you happen to be in the four-dimensional fabric of space-time. Speaking of being trapped in our perspective, there's another mystery that happens every night when consciousness takes a break. Sleep hits you every single night, and then the weirdest theater show begins inside your head. Stories that make zero sense unfold like blockbuster movies. You might find yourself flying through your childhood home, having a conversation with your dead grandmother while riding a purple elephant. Then you wake up and think, what the hell was that about? Dreams baffle scientists more than black holes or quantum physics. We spend roughly 8 years of our lives dreaming, yet nobody can definitively explain why our brains cook up these nightly adventures. It's like having a Netflix subscription that only plays random personalized fever dreams. Some people remember every detail of their dreams, keeping dream journals thicker than phone books. Others swear they never dream at all, though sleep labs prove everyone dreams during REM sleep. Your brain doesn't care if you remember or not. It's busy creating its own twisted reality show regardless. Then there's the prediction game. Throughout history, people claimed dreams showed the future. Ancient Egyptians built entire careers around dream interpretation. Modern skeptics roll their eyes, but then someone dreams about their uncle calling with bad news. And sure enough, the phone rings the next morning. Coincidence or cosmic preview? The jury's still out. Scientists have discovered that dreams help process memories, sorting through the day's junk like a cosmic filing system. Your brain takes random fragments, that weird conversation at lunch, a song on the radio, your fear of spiders, and mixes them into a mental smoothie. Sometimes brilliant ideas emerge from this chaos. Kekulé figured out the structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake eating its own tail. Paul McCartney heard Yesterday in a dream. Even Google's co-founder credits a dream for inspiring the company's original concept. But why does your brain bother with all this nonsense? Why not just shut down completely like a computer? One theory suggests dreams are practice runs for real-life situations. Your unconscious mind rehearses scenarios, working through problems while you snore peacefully. Another idea claims dreams help purge unnecessary information, like deleting old files to free up hard drive space. The weirdest part might be lucid dreaming, where you realize you're dreaming while still asleep. Suddenly you become the director of your own mental movie, able to control the plot, characters, and special effects. Some people master this skill, turning their dream time into personal playgrounds where they can fly, meet celebrities, or practice speeches without consequences. Dreams don't follow normal rules of physics, logic, or social etiquette. You can breathe underwater, travel through time, or have deep philosophical conversations with your pet goldfish. Your brain accepts these impossibilities without question until you wake up and wonder how you ever thought riding a dinosaur to your high school math class seemed perfectly reasonable. Different cultures interpret dreams differently. Some view them as messages from spirits or gods. Others see them as meaningless brain static. Indigenous Australian cultures consider dreams part of the dream time, a sacred dimension where past, present, and future merge. Freud thought dreams revealed hidden desires, though modern psychologists largely moved beyond his specific theories. Technology now lets researchers peek into sleeping brains using advanced scanners. They can even predict what you're dreaming about by watching brain activity patterns. Japanese scientists created primitive videos of dreams, turning brain signals into fuzzy but recognizable images. We're getting closer to recording dreams like home movies, which raises fascinating questions about privacy and reality. Nightmares complicate the dream puzzle further. Why would evolution preserve a system that regularly terrifies us with imaginary threats? Maybe bad dreams serve as training simulations for dangerous situations, keeping our survival instincts sharp, or perhaps they're just unfortunate side effects of the brain's nightly maintenance routine, like glitches in a complex computer program. Animals dream too, at least mammals and some birds do. Dogs twitch their legs while sleeping, probably chasing dream squirrels. Rats navigate dream mazes similar to ones they learned while awake. Do they experience weird, surreal adventures like humans? We'll never know for sure, but their brain activity suggests something interesting happens during their sleep cycles. The mystery deepens when you consider that dreams feel completely real while they're happening. Your emotional responses are genuine. Dream fear triggers actual stress hormones. Dream joy creates real happiness. This blurs the line between sleeping and waking consciousness in ways that philosophers and neuroscientists still struggle to understand. Dreams remain one of the most intimate yet universal human experiences. Everyone has them, but each person's dream world stays completely private unless they choose to share. We all participate in this nightly ritual of organized chaos, our minds creating impossible stories that somehow feel meaningful, even when they're absolutely ridiculous. While our brains spin these nocturnal tales, something even more intriguing unfolds beyond our sleeping minds, the vast cosmos that surrounds our dreaming planet, holding secrets that might determine whether we're truly alone in this enormous universe. We've got over 5,000 confirmed planets outside our solar system. That number keeps growing every year. Scientists call them exoplanets, and some look surprisingly similar to Earth. They orbit stars at just the right distance where water could stay liquid. Not too hot, not too cold. The Goldilocks zone, astronomers say with a grin. But here's what's strange. We haven't heard a peep from anyone out there. Our galaxy alone contains roughly 100 billion stars. Many have planets. The universe holds billions of galaxies. Do the math, and you get numbers so big they make your head spin. With all those worlds spinning around all those stars, shouldn't somebody be broadcasting game shows or rock music by now? This puzzle has a name: Fermi's paradox. After physicist Enrico Fermi, he asked his colleagues during lunch one day in 1950, "Where is everybody?" The question still haunts scientists today. If life is common in the universe, we should see evidence everywhere. Radio signals, weird structures around distant stars, something. Instead, we get cosmic silence. Well, not complete silence. We've detected thousands of mysterious radio bursts from deep space. Fast radio bursts, they're called. They last milliseconds and pack enormous energy. Most seem natural, coming from collapsing stars or black holes. But every once in a while, astronomers find patterns that make them wonder, could some be artificial? Nobody knows for sure. Then there's the famous WOW signal from 1977. Astronomer Jerry Eman spotted an unusual radio transmission that lasted 72 seconds. It came from the direction of Sagittarius and never repeated. He circled it on the printout and wrote, "Wow," in the margin. Decades later, scientists still debate what caused it. Natural phenomenon or alien greeting card. The mystery remains unsolved. Some researchers think we're looking in the wrong places or using the wrong methods. Maybe aliens communicate through quantum entanglement or gravitational waves instead of radio. Maybe they're already here, disguised as something we don't recognize. Or maybe they're so advanced, they consider us about as interesting as ants consider our Wi-Fi networks. The Drake equation tries to estimate how many communicating civilizations exist in our galaxy. Frank Drake created it in 1961. You multiply factors like star formation rates, the fraction of stars with planets, and the likelihood of life developing. Depending on your guesses, you get answers ranging from 0 to millions. That's quite a spread. Space agencies take the search seriously enough to fund major projects. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, monitors the skies with powerful telescopes. They've analyzed billions of signals over decades. So far, every interesting blip turned out to be human interference, natural cosmic events, or equipment glitches. But they keep listening. The Kepler Space Telescope found something called Tabby's star, officially KIC 884628552. Its brightness dims in weird irregular patterns that stumped astronomers. Some suggested alien megastructures might be blocking the light. Turns out, dust clouds probably cause the dimming. But for a while there, people got genuinely excited about potential alien engineering projects. Maybe the answer lies in timing. The universe is roughly 13.8 billion years old, but complex life took over 3 billion years to develop on Earth. Perhaps most civilizations destroy themselves before they master interstellar communication. Nuclear war, climate change, artificial intelligence run amok. The window between developing technology and wiping yourself out might be tragically short. Or maybe space is just too big and travel too slow. Even at light speed, crossing our galaxy takes 100,000 years. Alpha Centauri, our nearest star system, sits 4.37 light-years away. That's about 25 trillion miles. With current technology, getting there would take tens of thousands of years. Aliens face the same physics we do. Another possibility: they're hiding on purpose. If the galaxy contains aggressive civilizations that wipe out competitors, staying quiet makes sense. Broadcast your location, and you might attract unwanted attention. Earth has been leaking radio signals for about a century now. Maybe that wasn't such a smart idea. Recent discoveries keep the hope alive. Scientists found organic molecules on Mars and detected water plumes shooting from Jupiter's moon Europa. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, has lakes of liquid methane. Life might not need Earth-like conditions after all. It could exist in forms we haven't imagined yet. The James Webb Space Telescope can analyze the atmospheres of distant planets, looking for gases that might indicate life. Oxygen, methane, and other biosignatures could reveal inhabited worlds without requiring direct contact. We might discover alien life exists, but just hasn't tried calling us. But if we do make contact someday, will we understand each other at all? Dolphins and humans share the same planet, yet we still struggle to communicate meaningfully. Aliens who evolved under completely different conditions might think in ways we can't even comprehend. Their version of hello might sound like random noise to us. The search continues, driven by one of humanity's deepest questions. And while we scan the stars for neighbors, we're simultaneously grappling with what makes anything worth appreciating in the first place. Beauty might be the only thing humans debate more passionately than pizza toppings. Every culture, every generation, every person seems to have wildly different opinions about what counts as beautiful. The ancient Greeks thought perfect proportions made something beautiful. They measured faces and buildings with mathematical precision. Meanwhile, medieval Europeans found pale, plump women gorgeous, while modern magazines push completely different standards. What's even weirder, these beauty rules flip faster than fashion trends. Victorian men loved tiny waists cinched so tight women could barely breathe. Today's fitness influencers celebrate strong muscular bodies that would have horrified those corset-wearing ancestors. In some African cultures, lip plates and neck rings represent peak beauty. Japanese art finds profound beauty in cracked pottery. They call it wabi-sabi, celebrating imperfection. Artists have been wrestling with beauty for thousands of years, and they can't agree either. Picasso painted faces with eyes in bizarre places, yet millions call his work beautiful. Jackson Pollock splattered paint randomly across canvases, creating masterpieces that sell for millions. Some people stare at these paintings and feel moved to tears. Others see expensive messes that their 5-year-old nephew could create during a tantrum. Then there's nature, which seems to operate by completely different beauty rules. Flowers evolved bright colors to attract insects, not humans. Yet we find roses romantic and sunflowers cheerful. Peacocks developed elaborate tail feathers for mating displays. Humans turned those same patterns into decorative art. Mountains formed through violent geological processes, crushing and grinding rock for millions of years. We call the results breathtaking and plan vacations around staring at them. But here's where philosophy gets really twisted. Some thinkers argue beauty exists independent of human opinion. They claim certain mathematical ratios, like the golden ratio found in Nautilus shells and galaxy spirals, represent universal beauty standards. Music theorists point out that harmonious frequencies create pleasing sounds across all cultures, suggesting some cosmic beauty blueprint. Other philosophers completely disagree. They insist beauty exists only in our heads, a cultural construction with zero objective reality. If humans disappeared tomorrow, would a sunset still be beautiful? Would anyone care about the golden ratio? These thinkers argue that calling something beautiful just means I like this, dressed up in fancy language. Neuroscientists have jumped into this mess with brain scanners and electrical probes. They discovered that viewing art activates reward centers in our brains, the same areas that light up when eating chocolate or falling in love, but different brains respond to different artworks. Some people's neurons fire like crazy when viewing abstract paintings, while others show zero activity. The same brain might find a song beautiful on Tuesday and annoying on Wednesday. Technology keeps complicating beauty discussions. Instagram filters let anyone reshape their face instantly. Digital artists create impossible landscapes that never existed anywhere. Video game designers craft entire worlds that millions find more beautiful than reality. Ancient philosophers never had to worry about whether computer-generated imagery could be truly beautiful. Even mathematics gets called beautiful, which sounds completely insane until you meet passionate mathematicians. They describe elegant equations with the same breathless enthusiasm art critics use for Renaissance masterpieces. A physicist once said Einstein's theories were too beautiful not to be true. Numbers and formulas don't have colors or shapes, yet some mathematical proofs supposedly possess stunning beauty. Children add another wrinkle to beauty puzzles. Babies stare longer at faces adults consider attractive, suggesting some beauty preferences might be hardwired before cultural learning begins. Yet children also find beauty in mud pies, cartoon characters, and their own crayon scribbles that adults dismiss as chaos. Different senses create different beauty experiences too. We talk about beautiful music, beautiful food, even beautiful smells. Perfume makers spend fortunes crafting beautiful fragrances, chefs arrange plates like visual artists. Sound engineers mix audio tracks to create beautiful listening experiences. Beauty apparently doesn't limit itself to just what we see. The strangest part might be ugly beauty. Horror movies can be beautifully crafted. Gothic architecture finds beauty in darkness and decay. Some music genres celebrate harsh, discordant sounds that traditional standards would call ugly. Heavy metal fans find beauty in aggressive guitar distortion. Grunge fashion made torn, dirty clothes fashionable. Modern art galleries showcase works that deliberately challenge traditional beauty concepts. Installations made from garbage, performances that involve pain, conceptual pieces that exist only as ideas. Critics write lengthy essays explaining their profound beauty, while visitors scratch their heads in confusion. Animals probably don't worry about beauty philosophy, yet they clearly respond to certain visual and auditory patterns. Birds sing complex songs and build elaborate nests. Bowerbirds create intricate decorative displays. Do they experience beauty, or just follow genetic programming? Maybe beauty serves as evolution's trick to make us care about things that help survival. We find fertile landscapes beautiful, healthy mates attractive, ripe fruits appealing. But that theory breaks down when humans find abstract art or mathematical equations beautiful. Beauty remains as mysterious as consciousness itself. Speaking of mysteries our brains create, what exactly makes you uniquely you when everything about your body constantly changes? Look in the mirror right now. The person staring back at you feels familiar, doesn't it? You recognize those eyes, that face, those imperfections you've grown to accept. But here's the thing that might blow your mind. Almost every cell in your body has been replaced since you were 7 years old. Your skin cells die and regenerate every few weeks. Your liver rebuilds itself every 150 days. Even your bones completely remake themselves every decade. So if you're basically a walking replacement factory, what makes you still you? This isn't just philosophical navel-gazing. Scientists, lawyers, and philosophers have wrestled with this question for centuries because it matters in real ways. When someone commits a crime and gets sentenced to prison 20 years later, are we punishing the same person? When you promise to love someone forever, which version of yourself is making that commitment? Your memories seem like the obvious answer. They're your personal highlight reel, right? But memories are terrible witnesses. They fade, change, and sometimes flat out lie to you. That embarrassing thing you did in high school, your brain has probably edited it 17 times by now. You might remember wearing a red shirt when it was actually blue. You could swear your first kiss happened at the school dance when it was really behind the gym. Even worse, scientists have shown they can implant false memories in people. In experiments, researchers convinced participants they were lost in a mall as children, an event that never happened. Within weeks, people were adding vivid details to this fake memory, describing the stranger who helped them and the store where they cried. Then there's your personality. Surely that's the core of who you are. Well, ask anyone who knew you as a kid. You probably loved different foods, had different fears, and laughed at completely different jokes. Some people do complete 180s. The class clown becomes a serious lawyer. The shy kid transforms into a confident speaker. Brain injuries can change personality overnight. A gentle person might become aggressive after a car accident damages their frontal lobe. Ancient philosophers had a brilliant thought experiment for this puzzle. It's called the ship of Theseus. Imagine a famous wooden ship that's been preserved in a museum. Over the years, as pieces rot away, they get replaced with identical new parts. Eventually every single plank, nail, and rope has been swapped out. Is it still the same ship? Here's where it gets really wild. What if someone collected all those old rotted pieces, restored them, and rebuilt the original ship? Now you have two ships. Which one is the real ship of Theseus? Your body faces the same paradox. You're like that ship, constantly replacing parts while somehow staying you. Some people think the answer lies in your brain. After all, that's where your thoughts live, where decisions get made. But even your brain cells change and die. Plus, we've seen people with severe brain damage who still seem like themselves in some ways. Their families recognize something familiar, even when memories and personality shift dramatically. Religious folks often point to the soul, some unchanging essence that makes you unique. But that's hard to test in a laboratory. Where does the soul live? When does it arrive? Does it leave when you're unconscious during surgery? Modern technology makes this question even weirder. If scientists could scan your entire brain and upload it to a computer, would that digital version be you? What if they made 10 copies? Which one gets to claim your identity, your bank account, your relationships? The legal system wrestles with these questions constantly. Courts have decided that people with multiple personality disorder are still one legal person. They've ruled that someone with Alzheimer's disease can still be held responsible for contracts they signed while their memory was intact. But where exactly do we draw these lines? Maybe the question itself is wrong. Instead of asking what makes you you, perhaps we should ask why we need a single consistent identity at all. You're not the same person at work as you are with your family. You act differently when you're tired versus energized, stressed versus relaxed. What if identity isn't a thing you have, but something you do? Every day you wake up and choose to continue the story that started with your birth. You honor old commitments, maintain relationships, and build on past experiences. You're like an author writing the same character across multiple books, keeping some traits consistent while allowing for growth and change. This connects perfectly to another puzzle about the mind, one that's becoming more urgent as computers get smarter and more human-like. If identity is this flexible and mysterious for humans, how will we recognize it in machines? Robots can beat chess masters, write poems, and even create artwork that sells for millions. But here's the million-dollar question: are they actually thinking, or just following incredibly complex instructions? The difference matters more than you might realize. When you ask a computer to write a story, it doesn't sit there imagining characters or feeling inspired. It analyzes billions of text patterns and predicts what words should come next. The result might be beautiful, funny, or even moving, but the machine never experienced any emotions while creating it. It's like a player piano. The music sounds real, but there's no musician inside feeling the melody. The Chinese room thought experiment illustrates this perfectly. Imagine someone who doesn't speak Chinese locked in a room with an enormous book of rules. People slide Chinese characters under the door, and this person uses the rulebook to slide back appropriate responses. To outsiders, it looks like the person understands Chinese perfectly, but they're just following instructions without comprehending a single word. Many philosophers argue this is exactly what computers do with language. They manipulate symbols without understanding meaning. Then there's the consciousness problem. When you stub your toe, you don't just detect damage and react accordingly. You actually feel pain. There's a subjective personal experience happening inside your mind. Scientists call this qualia, the felt quality of experiences. The redness of red, the pain of a headache, the joy of laughter. Machines can detect wavelengths of light, but do they experience the color blue the way you do? Current AI systems can fool people in conversations for short periods, but they consistently fail deeper tests. Ask a human about their childhood, and they'll share memories tied to emotions, smells, and personal meaning. Ask an AI the same question, and it might generate a convincing story, but there's no actual childhood to remember. It's creating fiction, not recalling experiences. The scary part: some researchers think we're close to changing this completely. They predict artificial general intelligence, machines that match or exceed human thinking in every area, within decades. These wouldn't be narrow programs that play chess or recognize faces. They'd be digital minds capable of learning anything humans can learn, but potentially much faster. Moore's law suggests computer processing power doubles roughly every 2 years. While this trend is slowing, quantum computers and other technologies might maintain rapid progress. If machines eventually process information millions of times faster than human brains, they could solve problems we can't even formulate. They might discover scientific principles, create art, or develop philosophies that surpass anything humans have imagined. But speed isn't everything. Your smartphone can calculate mathematical problems faster than Einstein ever could, but it can't have Einstein's insights about the nature of reality. Thinking involves more than processing power. It requires understanding, creativity, and consciousness. The question remains whether these qualities can emerge from silicon and electricity the way they emerge from carbon and chemistry in human brains. Some scientists believe consciousness is simply what complex information processing feels like from the inside. If they're right, sufficiently advanced computers might naturally develop inner experiences, Others argue consciousness requires something special about biological systems, perhaps quantum effects in brain cells or the specific way neurons connect and communicate. The Turing test, proposed decades ago, suggests a machine thinks if it can fool humans in conversation. Modern chatbots come close to passing this test, but critics argue it measures performance, not genuine understanding. A parrot can repeat words convincingly, without grasping their meaning. Similarly, machines might simulate thinking without actually experiencing thoughts. Recent AI systems exhibit surprising behaviors, their creators never programmed directly. They develop strategies in games, create unexpected solutions to problems, and sometimes produce outputs that puzzle even their designers. This emergence of unplanned abilities hints at something deeper happening inside these systems, though whether it constitutes real thinking remains hotly debated. The implications stretch far beyond academic curiosity. If machines can truly think, do they deserve rights? Could they suffer? Would turning off a conscious computer be murder? These questions might sound like science fiction, but they're becoming increasingly relevant as AI systems grow more sophisticated. Consider this: if you met someone who claimed to think and feel, how would you verify their consciousness? You can't step inside their mind to check. You rely on their behavior, their responses, their apparent understanding. The same challenge applies to machines. We might never definitively prove whether AI systems genuinely think or just simulate thinking perfectly. The boundary between simulation and reality blurs when the simulation becomes complete enough. If a machine behaves indistinguishably from a thinking being, responds appropriately to every situation, and claims to have inner experiences, what meaningful difference exists between that and real thinking? Yet something feels fundamentally different about human consciousness and current AI. We experience genuine emotions, form personal relationships, and create meaning from our experiences. Whether machines will ever share these qualities, or develop entirely different forms of consciousness we can't imagine, remains one of the most fascinating puzzles of our time. Speaking of puzzles, there's another mystery that makes scientists scratch their heads: the strange reality of absolute nothingness. When you open an empty box, what's inside? Nothing, right? But here's where things get weird. That nothing might actually be something. And no, this isn't just clever wordplay, it's one of the strangest puzzles in all of science and philosophy. Scientists used to think empty space was truly empty, like completely vacant, a perfect void with absolutely zilch happening. Then quantum physics showed up, and basically said, "Hold my beer." Turns out, what we call empty space is buzzing with activity. Particles pop into existence, dance around for a fraction of a second, then vanish again. Virtual particles, they call them. The vacuum isn't vacant at all, it's like a nightclub for subatomic particles. Well, this creates a mind-bending problem. If even the emptiest space contains something, where exactly do we find nothing? Maybe true nothingness doesn't exist anywhere in our universe. That's pretty wild when you think about it. We have a word for something that might not even be possible. But let's dig deeper into this rabbit hole. Zero is a number, but what does it actually represent? Ancient mathematicians didn't even have a concept of zero for centuries. Romans got by just fine without it. They could build aqueducts and conquer half the world, but they couldn't write down nothing as a number. When zero finally showed up in mathematics, it revolutionized everything. Suddenly you could do algebra, calculate negative numbers, and invent calculus. A symbol for nothing became incredibly powerful. Then there's the philosophical angle, which gets even weirder. Some thinkers argue that nothing is logically impossible. Why? Because the moment you think about nothing, you're thinking about something. The concept of nothing becomes something in your mind. It's like trying to imagine a color that doesn't exist. Your brain just can't do it without creating something to work with. Language makes this whole mess even more confusing. We say there's nothing in the fridge when we mean there's no food, but there's still air, shelves, and that mysterious sticky stuff on the bottom shelf. We say nothing happened today when tons of things happened. Your heart beat, planets moved, stars exploded somewhere in space. We use nothing to mean not much, or not what I wanted, but rarely actual nothingness. Here's another twist that'll bake your brain. Some scientists think our entire universe might have come from nothing, not almost nothing, or very little something. Literally nothing. Before the Big Bang, they suggest, there wasn't space, time, matter, or energy. Then boom, everything appeared from nowhere. How does that even work? Nobody knows. It's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. except there's no hat, no magician, and technically no rabbit until it appears. The ancient Greeks wrestled with this too because apparently humans have been confusing themselves about nothing for thousands of years. Aristotle famously said, "Nature abhors a vacuum." He thought empty space was impossible. Something would always rush in to fill the gap. Modern physics proved him wrong about vacuums. But maybe he was onto something deeper. Maybe reality itself can't tolerate true nothingness. Religious thinkers have their own take. Some say God created everything from nothing. Creation ex nihilo, that's impressive job skills right there. Others argue that something eternal must have always existed, because getting something from absolute nothing is impossible. The debate rages on, probably because nobody can examine actual nothingness to settle the question. But here's what really scrambles the philosophical eggs. If nothing is the absence of everything, can we even call it something? The word nothing refers to, well, nothing. It's a word about the absence of things to word about. Your head hurting yet? Welcome to the club. Scientists studying the early universe face this paradox constantly. They trace cosmic history back to smaller and smaller fractions of a second after the Big Bang. But what about time zero? What about before? The equations break down. Math throws up its hands and says, "I got nothing," which might be literally true. Maybe the real question isn't whether nothing exists, but whether we're even capable of understanding it. Our brains evolved to deal with things: food, predators, shelter, other people. We're not wired to process the absence of everything. We're like fish trying to understand what it's like outside water, except we're trying to understand what it's like outside existence itself. The strangest part, while we're sitting here wondering if nothing can be something, animals might experience the world in ways we can't even imagine. Makes you wonder what other impossible things seem perfectly normal to minds that work differently than ours. Look at your dog when it steps on something sharp. The yelp, the quick retreat, the way it holds up its paw, seems pretty obvious what's happening, right? But here's where things get philosophically messy. We assume that yelp means the same thing as our ouch. But do we actually know that? Scientists have been wrestling with this question for decades, and the answer isn't as simple as you might think. Sure, mammals share remarkably similar nervous systems. Dogs, cats, elephants, and humans all have neurons that fire when tissue gets damaged. We've got nearly identical pain pathways running from injury sites straight to the brain. The hardware looks the same, but does that mean the software, the actual experience, matches up? Then there's the behavior angle. Watch a chimpanzee comfort another chimp that's been hurt. See how elephants gather around a wounded family member. Notice how rats will actually free other rats from traps, even when there's no reward involved. These aren't programmed responses. They're complex social behaviors that suggest something deeper is going on upstairs. But here's where it gets weird. Some fish change their behavior dramatically after getting hooked. They avoid the area where it happened. They become more cautious around anything that looks like fishing gear. That's not just a reflex, that's learning from a negative experience. Even bees, with their tiny brains, will avoid flowers they associate with unpleasant tastes. The mirror test throws another wrench into things. Put a red dot on an animal's forehead and show them a mirror. Do they recognize it's themselves and try to touch the dot? Elephants, dolphins, and some great apes pass this test. Most dogs don't. Does failing the mirror test mean they feel less pain, or just that they process self-awareness differently? Language complicates everything here. Humans can say, "My stomach hurts," or "That stings a little." We can rate pain on a scale from 1 to 10. Animals can't give us those details, so we're left guessing based on behavior and biology. A horse might be in agony but still try to run, survival instinct overriding pain signals. A bird might sit quietly while suffering because showing weakness attracts predators. Laws already assume animals feel pain, at least to some degree. Most countries have animal cruelty statutes. Veterinarians use anesthesia during surgery. We don't typically worry about giving shots to rocks or cutting down trees, but we do think twice about procedures on mammals. The legal system has essentially decided this philosophical question has a practical answer. Recent research keeps pushing the boundaries further. Octopuses, with completely different nervous systems from ours, show what looks like emotional responses to pain. They'll favor an injured limb long after it's healed. Some even seem to hold grudges against researchers who've hurt them before. That's pretty sophisticated for an animal that's more closely related to snails than to us. The weirdest part might be that we can't even fully understand human pain experiences. Your headache feels different from mine. What I call sharp might be what you'd describe as throbbing. Chronic pain patients often struggle to explain their experience to doctors who haven't felt it themselves. If we can't perfectly communicate pain between humans with language, how can we expect to understand it across species? Fish present the biggest puzzle. Some species release stress hormones when injured and seek out painkillers when they're available. Others show no obvious response to procedures that would send mammals running. Are fish just stoic, or do they process damage completely differently? Cultural attitudes toward animal pain have shifted dramatically over time. A century ago, many scientists insisted animals were basically biological machines, complex but ultimately unconscious. Today, most researchers assume consciousness exists across a wide range of species. Even if we can't measure it directly, the practical implications matter more than the philosophical ones in many cases. Better understanding animal pain has led to improved welfare standards in farming, better veterinary care, and more humane research methods. Whether a cow experiences pain exactly like humans do matters less than recognizing it experiences something unpleasant that we should try to minimize. But there's still that nagging question: when your cat purrs while being petted, is it feeling something like contentment? When dolphins play together, do they experience joy? The pain question opens up a whole universe of animal emotions we might never fully understand. What makes this even more complex is that human babies can't describe their pain either, yet we never doubt they feel it. Maybe the question isn't whether animals feel pain like us, but whether we're asking the wrong question entirely. Instead of comparing their experience to ours, perhaps we should be wondering what it's actually like to be them, which leads us into some truly mind-bending territory about consciousness itself. We spend years in classrooms memorizing dates, battles, and dead rulers. Teachers drill us on when the Civil War started, and who invented the printing press. But here's the thing nobody really talks about. Why does any of this old stuff actually matter? The standard answer sounds nice. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Sure, that makes sense on paper. Wars happen for similar reasons. Economic crashes follow patterns. Dictators rise using familiar playbooks. Yet we keep making the same mistakes anyway, even with all those history books sitting on shelves. Well, maybe the problem isn't that we ignore history. Maybe the problem is that history isn't what we think it is. Every historical fact you learned came filtered through someone's perspective. The winners write the textbooks. The losers get footnotes if they're lucky. When Europeans discovered America, millions of people already lived there. But guess whose version of events dominated the story for centuries? Then there's the personal stuff. Your family history shapes who you are more than any battle from 200 years ago. The stories your grandparents told, the traditions passed down, the struggles your ancestors faced. That history lives in your DNA, your habits, your fears. You carry forward patterns you don't even recognize. But here's where it gets really weird. History keeps changing, even though the past already happened. New documents surface. Archaeological digs reveal surprises. DNA testing rewrites family trees overnight. Scientists recently discovered that humans and Neanderthals mixed more than anyone thought. Suddenly everything we knew about early humans shifted. The ancient Egyptians built pyramids that still baffle engineers today. Medieval people weren't actually dirty and backwards like movies suggest. They had sophisticated medicine and engineering. Vikings weren't just raiders, they were explorers and traders who reached America 500 years before Columbus. History textbooks rewrite themselves constantly, and the forgotten stories, those might matter most of all. How many brilliant women never made it into books because societies ignored female achievements? How many innovations came from ordinary people whose names nobody recorded? The history we remember represents maybe 1% of what actually happened. Some philosophers argue that history is just storytelling with better footnotes. We take millions of random events and craft neat narratives that make sense. Cause and effect. Heroes and villains, clear beginnings and endings. Real life messier than any story though. People make decisions for stupid reasons. Accidents change everything. The butterfly effect means tiny events can topple empires. Consider this: if your great-great-grandfather had walked down a different street one day, he might never have met your great-great-grandmother. You wouldn't exist. Different people would be reading this right now. History splits into infinite possibilities at every moment, and we only see the one path that actually happened. Yet somehow, studying these particular accidents and choices helps us understand human nature. People in ancient Rome worried about the same things we do: money, relationships, what others thought of them. Reading their letters feels surprisingly familiar. The technology changes, but the basic human drama stays remarkably consistent. Maybe that's what history really teaches. Not specific lessons about avoiding wars or preventing crashes, but deeper patterns about how humans behave when they're scared, hopeful, desperate, or powerful. The details change, but the underlying psychological forces remain constant across centuries. Your own personal history works the same way. You are who you are because of a million tiny moments, choices, and coincidences that led to this exact point. Change any one element, and you'd be completely different. The specific events matter less than understanding the patterns they create. History also serves another function nobody talks about much. It makes us feel less alone, knowing that people throughout time faced uncertainty, heartbreak, and confusion helps put our current struggles in perspective. We're not the first generation to worry about the future or feel like the world is falling apart. The ancient Greeks thought democracy would destroy society. Romans believed their empire would last forever. People in the 1800s feared that trains would make human bodies explode from traveling too fast. Every generation thinks they're living through unprecedented times, but history shows that change and uncertainty are actually the most predictable things about human experience. But does any of this actually matter for your daily life? Probably not in obvious ways. Knowing about medieval farming techniques won't help you pay rent. Understanding ancient philosophy might not improve your relationships. History doesn't provide clear instructions for modern problems. What it does provide is context. Perspective, a sense that the current moment, however important it feels, is just one frame in a much longer movie. The same forces that drove people crazy 1,000 years ago still drive us crazy today, and somehow, humans keep muddling through anyway. Speaking of forces that drive us crazy, there's one particular aspect of human nature that creates endless conflict and confusion across all cultures and time periods. You walk into a room and mention you love pineapple on pizza. Half the people nod in agreement. The other half look at you like you just suggested putting ketchup on ice cream. Welcome to humanity's favorite pastime, disagreeing about literally everything. But here's the weird part. We're all the same species. We have nearly identical DNA. Our brains work basically the same way. Yet we can't agree on simple things like whether a hot dog is a sandwich, or if the dress is blue and black or white and gold. What gives? Your brain isn't the neutral observer you think it is. It's more like an over-enthusiastic detective who's already decided who the criminal is before examining the evidence. Scientists call these cognitive biases, and we're loaded with them. Confirmation bias makes us cherry-pick information that supports what we already believe. Availability bias tricks us into thinking plane crashes are more common than car accidents because we hear about them more on the news. Then there's the anchoring effect. The first piece of information you hear about something becomes your mental starting point. If someone tells you a used car is worth $20,000, you'll think $15,000 is a bargain, even if the car is actually worth $8,000. Your brain got anchored to that first number and can't let go. Childhood experiences shape our beliefs like wet cement. The religion your parents practiced, the political conversations at your dinner table, whether your family trusted strangers or feared them, all of this gets hardwired into your thinking before you're old enough to question it. By age 7, many of your core beliefs are already forming. By 25, they're practically set in stone. Language creates another layer of confusion. English has one word for love. Ancient Greek had 8 different words for different types of love. Some languages have dozens of words for snow. Others have specific terms for emotions that don't translate into English at all. When we can't even agree on what words mean, how can we agree on ideas? Cultural differences make things even messier. In some countries, arriving exactly on time shows respect. In others, showing up 30 minutes late is perfectly normal. Some cultures value individual achievement above everything else. Others prioritize group harmony. These aren't right or wrong approaches. They're just different ways of organizing society. But they lead to massive misunderstandings when people from different backgrounds interact. Social media has turned disagreement into a full-contact sport. Algorithms show you content that gets strong reactions, which usually means content that makes you angry or outraged. You end up in echo chambers where everyone thinks exactly like you do, making opposing viewpoints seem even more extreme and unreasonable than they actually are. Geography plays a bigger role than most people realize. City dwellers and rural residents often have completely different priorities and concerns. Someone living in a crowded urban area might prioritize public transportation and gun control. Someone on a rural farm might care more about property rights and wildlife management. Neither person is wrong. They're just dealing with different realities. Fear drives many disagreements. Change threatens our sense of security, so we resist new ideas that might disrupt our comfortable worldview. This explains why people often reject scientific discoveries or social changes initially, even when the evidence is overwhelming. The human brain evolved to prioritize survival over truth, so when new information feels threatening, we tend to reject it rather than adapt. Educational differences create knowledge gaps that lead to arguments. Someone with a background in economics might understand why certain policies make sense from a financial perspective. Someone without that background might focus on the human impact of those same policies. Both perspectives matter, but they often talk past each other because they're using different frameworks for understanding the same issue. Pride makes compromise nearly impossible. Admitting you're wrong feels like losing, especially in public. So people double down on their positions even when presented with contradictory evidence. Politicians are especially guilty of this, but regular people do it too. Nobody wants to look foolish or weak. Emotional investment clouds judgment. When you feel passionate about something, your brain literally processes information differently. Areas responsible for logical thinking become less active while emotional centers take over. This is why discussing politics or religion often goes nowhere. People aren't thinking, they're feeling. Group identity adds another complication. Humans are tribal creatures. We define ourselves partly by which groups we belong to and which ones we oppose. Supporting your team's position becomes more important than finding the truth. Sports fans understand this perfectly. You support your team even when they're terrible. The strangest part is that disagreement might actually be useful. When people challenge your ideas, they force you to think more carefully about them. Societies with healthy debate tend to make better decisions than ones where everyone agrees all the time. The problem isn't that we disagree, it's that we've forgotten how to disagree productively. But what if all this disagreement and debate is actually preparing us for something bigger? Or what if our inability to settle these arguments hints at an even deeper question about whether any human question can truly be settled? The idea of destiny has haunted human minds for thousands of years. Ancient Greeks believed in the fates, three sisters who spun, measured and cut the threads of every life. Your thread was your story, already woven before you took your first breath. But here's where it gets messy. If everything is already decided, why does it feel like you're making choices every single day? Religious traditions split on this question harder than a wishbone at Thanksgiving. Some faiths teach that God already knows your entire life story, from birth to death and everything between. Others insist you have complete freedom to shape your path. Christianity alone has spent centuries arguing about predestination versus free will. Calvin said God picked the saved and the damned before creation began. Arminians fired back that humans choose their own eternal fate. The debate still rages in theology classrooms today. Science throws another curveball into the mix. Physics operates on cause and effect. Every action triggers a reaction like dominoes falling in an endless chain. Your brain fires neurons based on chemistry and electricity. Those neurons create thoughts. Those thoughts become decisions. If scientists could map every particle in the universe and track their movements, they might predict exactly what you'll have for lunch tomorrow. While Einstein believed the universe was deterministic, famously saying God does not play dice. Quantum mechanics later proved him wrong about the dice part, but the bigger question remained. Then there's the butterfly effect, which sounds cute but reveals something terrifying about the future. A butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil might trigger a tornado in Texas weeks later. Tiny changes snowball into massive consequences. Weather forecasters can barely predict rain 5 days out, let alone whether you'll be happy in 5 years. Chaos theory suggests that even if the future is determined by physical laws, it's so sensitive to initial conditions that prediction becomes impossible. Fortune-telling has captivated humans across every culture imaginable. Tarot cards, palm reading, astrology, crystal balls, the methods change, but the desire stays constant. People want to know what's coming. Ancient Romans wouldn't make major decisions without consulting bird flight patterns. Chinese emperors relied on the I Ching. Modern folks check their horoscopes before dates. The billion-dollar psychic industry proves that uncertainty makes people desperate for answers, even questionable ones. But what if the future isn't fixed or random, but something weirder? What if multiple futures exist simultaneously, until you collapse them into reality through your choices? Quantum physicists play with this idea. Schrödinger's cat sits in a box. both alive and dead until someone opens the lid. Your life might branch into countless possibilities, until you pick a direction. Every decision could split reality into alternate timelines where different versions of you live completely different lives. Consider your daily experience though. You deliberate about decisions. Should I take this job? Call that person? Move to another city? The mental effort feels real. The uncertainty feels real. Your brain weighs options, considers consequences, changes its mind. If everything is predetermined, this whole process becomes an elaborate illusion. You're an actor reading lines you don't remember memorizing in a play you never auditioned for. Cultural differences make this puzzle even stranger. Western societies emphasize individual choice and personal responsibility. Eastern philosophies often embrace acceptance of fate and cosmic order. Buddhism teaches that attachment to controlling outcomes causes suffering. Hinduism speaks of karma determining your circumstances across multiple lifetimes. Indigenous cultures might see time as circular rather than linear, making the whole question of future meaningless. Modern neuroscience adds another twist. Brain scans show neural activity beginning before people report making conscious decisions. Your brain starts preparing to move your hand several seconds before you decide to reach for something. This suggests either consciousness is slower than we think, or free will is more complicated than it appears. Maybe what feels like choice is really just your brain explaining actions it already started. Technology complicates everything further. Algorithms now predict your behavior with scary accuracy. Netflix knows what you'll want to watch. Amazon suggests products you didn't know you needed. Google anticipates your searches before you finish typing. If companies can forecast your choices, how free are they really? Data scientists claim they can predict divorces, job changes, even political votes based on digital breadcrumbs you leave behind. Yet uncertainty persists in every human life. Natural disasters strike without warning. People fall in love unexpectedly. Revolutionary discoveries change everything overnight. The COVID pandemic proved that even the most sophisticated models can't account for every variable. Black swan events, rare unpredictable occurrences with massive impact, reshape history regularly. Perhaps the question itself is flawed. Maybe asking whether the future is decided assumes time works in ways it doesn't. Einstein showed that past, present and future might be human constructs rather than universal truths. From outside space-time, your entire life might appear as a single unchanging object, like viewing a completed movie reel instead of watching it frame by frame. The mystery deepens when you realize that believing in fate versus freedom actually changes how people behave, creating different futures based on their assumptions about whether futures can be created at all. We've been asking questions for 23 chapters now. Each answer seemed to create 3 new puzzles, but here's one that might break your brain. Can every question actually be answered? Most people assume that if you ask something, there must be an answer somewhere. Wrong. Dead wrong. In 1931, a mathematician named Kurt Gödel proved something shocking. He showed that in any mathematical system complex enough to handle basic arithmetic, there will always be true statements that cannot be proven within that system. Always, no exceptions. This isn't about being lazy or not trying hard enough. It's mathematically impossible. Gödel basically said, hey, your perfectly logical system, it's got built-in blind spots it can never see. The math world is still recovering from this bombshell nearly a century later. Then there's language itself. Some languages literally cannot ask certain questions. The Piraham people of the Amazon have no words for exact numbers beyond 2. They can't ask how many stars are in the sky, the way we do. Their language doesn't permit it. Meanwhile, we can't ask questions that don't exist in English, but might exist in languages we haven't discovered yet. Even weirder. Some questions create paradoxes that eat themselves. Can God create a rock so heavy that even God cannot lift it? This isn't deep theology. It's a logic trap. Answer yes, and God isn't all-powerful, because there's something God can't lift. Answer no, and God isn't all-powerful, because there's something God can't create. The question breaks itself. Science hits walls too. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle doesn't just say we don't know both the position and momentum of a particle simultaneously. It says we cannot know, ever. The universe itself prevents this knowledge. It's like reality has built-in privacy settings. Quantum mechanics gets stranger. Some experiments suggest that asking certain questions changes the answers. The act of observation alters what you're observing. So maybe some questions shouldn't be answered because asking them literally changes reality. But here's where it gets personal. Your brain, The thing asking all these questions has limits too. You can't see ultraviolet light, hear sounds above certain frequencies, or process infinite concepts without getting dizzy. Why would your thinking be unlimited when everything else about you isn't? Neuroscientists have found that human brains max out at processing about 7 pieces of information simultaneously. 7. That's why phone numbers used to be 7 digits. Beyond that, we start forgetting or making mistakes. If our brains cap out at 7 simple things, what happens when we tackle infinite complexity? Some philosophers argue this is actually liberating. If not everything can be answered, we're free to wonder without the pressure of finding solutions. Others find it terrifying, like being trapped in a room with doors that lead nowhere. Technology creates new unanswerable questions faster than we solve old ones. Artificial intelligence can now write poetry and paint pictures, but can it truly understand what it creates? We built these machines, yet we can't answer basic questions about how they work. We're creating mysteries about our own creations. The internet promised to answer everything. Instead, it generated millions of new questions we never thought to ask. Every Wikipedia article leads to 12 more topics you've never heard of. Every answer spawns new confusion. Consider this, maybe the right question isn't whether all questions can be answered, but whether they should be. Some questions might be more valuable for the wondering than the knowing. What if the mystery is the point? Ancient Greek philosophers understood this. They knew that wisdom often meant knowing what you don't know. Socrates became famous for admitting ignorance. That's not giving up, that's recognizing the landscape. Modern physics suggests the universe itself might be fundamentally uncertain at its core. If reality is probabilistic rather than deterministic, then some questions literally have no definite answers. The universe is playing dice, and sometimes there is no right number. This doesn't mean we should stop asking questions. Quite the opposite. Knowing that some questions can't be answered makes the answerable ones more precious. Every solved mystery is a small victory against the vast unknown. Scientists keep pushing boundaries precisely because they know boundaries exist. Mathematicians prove theorems knowing that some truths will always remain just out of reach. Artists create beauty in the space between questions and answers. Maybe the most human thing we do isn't finding answers, it's continuing to ask questions despite knowing some will never be solved. We question because we're curious, not because we're guaranteed satisfaction. The universe handed us minds capable of wondering about infinity while trapped in finite skulls. That's either cosmic cruelty or cosmic comedy. Perhaps the joke is on us, but we're the only species laughing. Speaking of what makes us uniquely human, there's another question that cuts even deeper than whether everything can be answered. What if the thing we're all really searching for isn't knowledge at all, but something much more elusive? You wake up one morning feeling fantastic. The sun hits your face just right, your coffee tastes perfect, and everything seems possible. By afternoon you're stressed about deadlines, by evening you're wondering if you'll ever feel truly content. What exactly is happiness anyway? Here's the strange part, nobody can agree on what it looks like. Some people seem genuinely happy living in a tiny apartment with barely any money. Others have mansions, sports cars and personal chefs but spend their days miserable. Your brain treats happiness like it's chasing a moving target that keeps shifting locations. Scientists decided to study this puzzle with actual numbers. They found something weird about money and happiness. Up to about $75,000 per year, more cash does make people happier. Makes sense, right? You can pay rent, buy decent food, and stop panicking about emergencies. But here's where it gets interesting. Beyond that point, the happiness boost from extra money drops dramatically. Billionaires aren't walking around 1,000 times happier than regular folks. Then there's genetics messing with the whole equation. Researchers studying identical twins discovered that about 50% of your happiness level comes from your DNA. Your parents didn't just give you their nose or their terrible sense of humor. They passed down your baseline mood settings too. Some people hit the genetic lottery and naturally bounce back from bad days. Others got dealt a tougher hand and have to work harder for the same emotional payoff. But genetics aren't destiny. The other 50% comes from your circumstances and choices. That's where things get really fascinating, because humans are terrible at predicting what will make them happy. You think getting promoted will solve everything, then you get promoted and find new things to worry about. You dream about vacation, then spend half of it checking work emails. Ancient Greek philosophers were obsessed with finding the good life. Aristotle called it eudaimonia, which isn't just feeling good, but actually doing well and living meaningfully. He thought happiness came from using your talents, building relationships and contributing to society. Not exactly the same as scrolling through social media and buying stuff online. Speaking of social media, researchers found it's creating a weird new happiness problem. Everyone posts their highlight reels, while you're living your behind-the-scenes reality. Your brain sees all these perfect vacation photos and achievements, and assumes everyone else has figured out some secret you're missing. The comparison trap makes contentment nearly impossible. Buddhism approaches happiness from a completely different angle. They argue that wanting things is the root of suffering. The more you chase happiness directly, the more it slips away. Instead of seeking pleasure, you should accept what is and find peace in the present moment. While Western psychology is starting to catch up, mindfulness meditation actually changes brain structure in ways that boost well-being. Let's not forget that happiness comes in different flavors. There's the immediate rush of eating chocolate or winning a game. Then there's the deeper satisfaction of finishing a difficult project or helping someone through a tough time. Psychologists call these hedonic and eudaimonic happiness. The first one feels good in the moment but fades quickly. The second builds slowly but lasts longer. Cultural differences make this even more complicated. Western societies often emphasize individual happiness. Follow your dreams. Do what makes you happy. Treat yourself. Many Eastern cultures focus more on family harmony and social duty. Research shows that people in collectivist societies often report different types of happiness than individualistic ones. But neither approach is clearly superior. The weird part is that pursuing happiness directly often backfires. Countries that are obsessed with happiness metrics sometimes score lower on actual well-being. It's like trying to fall asleep. The harder you focus on it, the more elusive it becomes. Happiness seems to show up as a side effect of doing other meaningful things rather than as a goal itself. Modern neuroscience reveals that your brain is constantly adapting to whatever becomes normal. Win the lottery, and within a year your happiness returns to roughly where it started. This hedonic treadmill means you're always running toward the next thing that might finally make you content, but the finish line keeps moving. Maybe the question isn't whether true happiness exists, but whether we're asking the wrong question entirely. Instead of seeking permanent bliss, what if contentment comes from accepting that emotions naturally rise and fall? What if happiness isn't a destination but more like weather, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, always changing? The ancient Stoics might have been onto something when they focused on what you can actually control rather than chasing feelings that come and go. Your actions, your responses, your character, these things you can shape. But even if we solve the happiness puzzle, there's still the question of how we organize society itself. Why do we need rules at all? Walk into any classroom, any home, any country. You'll find rules everywhere. Don't cheat on tests. Clean your room. Pay your taxes. Speed limits exist on roads you've never driven. Even video games have rules about what you can and can't do in imaginary worlds. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Most of these rules didn't exist 1,000 years ago. Traffic laws made no sense before cars. Internet privacy rules couldn't exist before computers. Copyright laws were pointless before printing presses. So why do we keep making more? The obvious answer seems simple. Chaos prevention. Without rules, society would crumble into mayhem. People would steal, lie, and hurt each other constantly. Roads would become demolition derbies. Nobody would show up to work on time. Schools would turn into zoos. Well, maybe, but some places tried this theory. During certain historical periods, governments collapsed entirely. Rules vanished overnight. Yet something fascinating happened. People often created their own informal rules almost immediately. Neighborhoods organized themselves. Markets still functioned. Communities formed their own justice systems. Humans seem to crave structure, even when nobody forces it on them. Then there's the parent problem. Every kid asks the same question. Why do I have to follow this rule? Parents usually give the same answers. Because I said so. For your own safety. Because that's how society works. But kids keep pushing back, and honestly, they raise good points sometimes. Consider bedtimes. Parents insist children sleep at specific hours. Science backs this up. Growing brains need rest. But why 8 p.m. instead of 8:30? Why can't a 10-year-old decide their own sleep schedule? The rule exists partly for health, partly for parental sanity, and partly because someone decided it should exist. School rules get even weirder. Students can't wear hats indoors in many schools. They can't chew gum. They must raise their hands before speaking. These aren't safety rules. They're social control mechanisms. Someone long ago decided these behaviors were inappropriate or disrespectful, and now millions of kids follow rules they never agreed to follow. Legal systems take this much further. Countries have thousands of laws most citizens never read. Did you know it's illegal to carry ice cream in your back pocket in parts of Alabama, or that you can't sing off-key in North Carolina? These laws exist because someone somewhere thought they solved a problem. Most people break minor laws daily without realizing it. But breaking rules sometimes drives progress. Rosa Parks broke segregation laws. Scientists broke religious rules about studying human bodies. Artists broke rules about what paintings should look like. Entrepreneurs broke rules about how businesses should operate. Every major advancement in human history required someone to ignore existing rules. This creates a philosophical puzzle. If rules prevent chaos, but breaking rules drives progress, how do we know which rules deserve respect? Some philosophers argue that unjust rules carry no moral authority. Others insist that rule-breaking always weakens society's foundation, even when the rules seem silly. Different cultures handle this differently. Some societies emphasize individual freedom over social order. Others prioritize group harmony over personal expression. Neither approach eliminates all problems. Freedom-focused cultures struggle with inequality and social fragmentation. Order-focused cultures struggle with innovation and individual rights. The enforcement question gets complicated too. Who decides what the rules mean? Judges interpret laws differently. Teachers apply classroom rules inconsistently. Parents change household rules based on their moods. The same rule can mean completely different things depending on who's enforcing it. Technology makes everything more complex. Should there be rules about artificial intelligence? What about genetic engineering? Space exploration, cryptocurrency, virtual reality? We're creating rules for situations that don't fully exist yet, based on problems we can only imagine. Some rules seem to enforce themselves. Social rules about politeness, for example. People follow these without laws requiring it. Nobody gets arrested for not saying please and thank you. But social pressure makes most people follow politeness rules anyway. These unwritten rules might be more powerful than legal ones. The fairness problem never disappears either. Rich people can hire lawyers to bend legal rules. Powerful countries can ignore international rules. Popular students can break school rules without punishment. Rules often protect those who make them more than those who follow them. Maybe the strangest thing about rules is how we feel about them emotionally. Following rules can feel safe and comforting. Breaking them can feel thrilling or terrifying. Some people rebel against all authority. Others never question any rule. Most of us exist somewhere in between, picking and choosing which rules matter to us. Rules shape everything from playground games to international treaties. They're simultaneously necessary and limiting, protective and oppressive, permanent and constantly changing, which raises another question about human nature entirely. Why do we need to imagine things that don't exist at all? Your brain is about to face one of its most frustrating challenges. Try imagining a completely new color, not blue mixed with green, not red shifted toward purple, but a genuinely brand new hue that has never existed. Go ahead, give it a shot. Can't do it. Welcome to the club. Every human who has ever lived shares this same mental roadblock, and it reveals something profound about how our minds work. The thing is, we're basically walking around with limited edition eyeballs. Humans can see roughly 10 million different colors, which sounds impressive until you realize we're missing most of the show. Our eyes contain 3 types of cone cells that detect red, green, and blue light. That's it. 3 channels of information creating our entire visual world. But here's where it gets wild. Mantis shrimp have 16 types of color receptors. 16. They're swimming around seeing a rainbow we can't even dream of, literally. Some birds have 4 color channels and can spot ultraviolet patterns on flowers that look plain to us. Reindeer eyes detect UV light to spot predators in snow. Meanwhile, we're squinting and calling it a day. Then there's the rare humans who won the genetic lottery. About 12% of women carry a genetic variation that gives them a 4th type of cone cell. These tetrachromats might see 100 million colors instead of our measly 10 million. They look at your red shirt and see subtle differences you'll never notice. One woman described seeing colors in a rainbow that others insisted weren't there. Imagine being the only person in the room who can see something everyone else calls impossible. Language makes this whole situation even stranger. Russian speakers have separate words for light blue and dark blue, and they can distinguish between these shades faster than English speakers. The Himba tribe in Africa groups colors differently than we do. They struggle to see the difference between blue and green but can instantly spot subtle green variations that confuse us completely. Your vocabulary literally changes what your brain pays attention to. Scientists have been trying to hack around our limitations for decades. They've created impossible colors, combinations that shouldn't exist according to our normal color processing. Stare at a red screen for 30 seconds, then immediately look at red and green stripes. Some people report seeing reddish-green, a color that breaks the rules of how we normally see. It's like catching your brain glitching. The military has experimented with night vision technology that translates infrared into visible colors, essentially giving soldiers temporary superpowers. Imagine seeing body heat as a new color category. Some researchers have even tried implanting magnets in fingertips to feel electromagnetic fields, wondering if we could develop entirely new senses. Artists have always pushed against color limitations. Painters in the 1800s went crazy when new synthetic pigments were invented. Suddenly they could paint colors that had never appeared in art before. Van Gogh's swirling yellows came from chrome yellow, a brand new pigment that was literally toxic. Painters were poisoning themselves for the sake of unprecedented color. Modern technology keeps expanding the weirdness. Your phone screen creates colors by mixing tiny red, green, and blue lights, tricking your 3-cone cells into seeing millions of combinations, but it's still just mixing the same 3 basic ingredients. Digital artists create colors that exist only as mathematical values. You can code RGB 255, 255 for magenta, but that particular shade of magenta might not exist anywhere in nature. Virtual reality developers face this problem constantly. They're trying to create worlds that feel more real than reality, but they're stuck with the same color palette humans have always had. Some researchers wonder if future VR might directly stimulate the brain, bypassing our eyes entirely to create genuinely new color experiences. The philosophical implications get mind-bending quickly. If we can't imagine new colors, what else are we missing? Maybe our emotions are just as limited as our color vision. Perhaps there are feelings we can't experience, thoughts we can't think, or concepts we can't grasp because our brains are built with specific limitations. Colorblind individuals often describe the moment they put on special glasses and see new colors for the first time. They break down crying, not from sadness but from overwhelming joy at experiencing something that was always there but invisible to them. Makes you wonder what other invisible worlds surround us right now. Every sunset you've ever admired represents a tiny fraction of the light actually present in that moment. Every flower, every painting, every face you see is broadcasting information your eyes simply discard. We're all living in a simplified version of reality, and we don't even know what we're missing. Speaking of things we can't fully grasp, there's another limitation that shapes everything we create and appreciate, something that goes beyond just seeing the world around us. What exactly is art supposed to do? That question has puzzled humans for thousands of years, and honestly we're no closer to a definitive answer today than ancient cave painters were. Walk into any modern art museum, and you'll see people staring at a canvas covered in random paint splatters, nodding thoughtfully like they've discovered the meaning of life. Meanwhile, the person next to them might be rolling their eyes, wondering why their tax dollars helped buy what looks like something their toddler made during a tantrum. Both reactions are completely valid, which makes art one of the weirdest human inventions. Some folks insist art exists to make us feel something. A sad song can make you cry about a breakup from 3 years ago. A painting of a sunset might fill you with peace. Horror movies deliberately terrify us, and somehow we pay money for that experience. But here's the thing, not everyone feels the same way about the same piece of art. Classical music puts some people to sleep and moves others to tears. Then there's the whole art for art's sake crowd. They argue that art doesn't need to serve any purpose beyond existing. A beautiful sculpture doesn't have to teach you a lesson or change your worldview. It just needs to be beautiful. This sounds nice until you remember that beauty itself is completely subjective. What's gorgeous to you might be hideous to your neighbor. Religious art throws another wrench into the discussion. For centuries, artists created works specifically to honor gods, tell sacred stories, or inspire spiritual feelings. The ceiling of the Sistine Chapel wasn't painted just because Michelangelo thought it would look cool. It was meant to bring people closer to the divine. But even religious art affects people differently. Believers might see a miracle, while atheists see skilled craftsmanship telling ancient stories. Street art complicates things further. Graffiti artists spray paint murals on building walls, often without permission. Some cities call it vandalism and scrub it off. Others celebrate it as authentic expression from marginalized communities. The same piece of art can be simultaneously illegal destruction and powerful social commentary, depending on who's looking. Let's not forget that art often serves as rebellion. Punk rock emerged partly to shock parents and challenge social norms. Controversial artists like Banksy hide their identities while creating works that critique politics, war, and capitalism. Their art exists specifically to disturb comfortable people and make them question things they take for granted. When art makes you uncomfortable, that might be the entire point. Technology keeps creating new art forms that previous generations couldn't imagine. Video games can tell stories and create emotional experiences. Digital artists create impossible worlds using computers. Social media platforms become canvases for memes and viral content. Some traditional artists hate these developments, while others embrace them. The definition of art keeps expanding whether purists like it or not. Cultural differences make art even more confusing. What's considered artistic genius in one society might be meaningless or offensive in another. Western museums are full of artifacts taken from other cultures, displayed as art when they were originally created as religious objects, tools, or ceremonial items. The original creators might not have even had a word for art as we understand it. Art therapy suggests that creating art can heal psychological wounds. People draw, paint, or sculpt to process trauma, express feelings they can't put into words, or simply relax. From this perspective, art serves as medicine for the mind. But does that mean art that doesn't heal anyone has less value? Money muddles everything about art's purpose. Wealthy collectors pay millions for paintings that sit in private mansions where nobody sees them. Art becomes investment, status symbol, or tax write-off. Famous artists can sell anything, literally anything, for enormous sums while equally talented unknowns struggle to pay rent. The art market suggests that art's main purpose is making rich people feel cultured. Performance art pushes boundaries even further. Artists might sit motionless in galleries for hours, letting visitors interact with them however they want. Others create elaborate spectacles that exist only once, then disappear forever. These works challenge our basic assumptions about what art should be or do. Children create art naturally, without worrying about purpose or meaning. They finger paint, because it's fun. They sing made-up songs because it feels good. They dance without caring if anyone's watching. Maybe we overthink art's purpose entirely. Perhaps the most honest answer is that art exists because humans can't help making it. But wait, if art's purpose remains this mysterious after thousands of years of human creativity, what does that say about our ability to understand our own motivations? Maybe the real question isn't what art is for, but why we keep desperately needing reasons to fear things we don't fully understand. Your heart pounds when you walk into a dark basement. Your palms sweat before a job interview. You feel uneasy watching a horror movie, even though you know it's fake. Why does the unknown make us so nervous? Scientists have found that our brains literally hate uncertainty. When faced with something unpredictable, your brain dumps stress chemicals into your bloodstream faster than you can say, "What was that noise?" This isn't a design flaw, it's a survival feature that kept our ancestors alive for thousands of years. Back when humans lived in caves and forests, the unknown usually meant danger. That rustling bush could hide a hungry predator. The strange sound at night might signal an enemy tribe approaching. People who investigated every mystery didn't live long enough to have kids. The cautious ones who feared the unknown survived and passed on their genes. We're their descendants, walking around with ancient alarm systems in our heads. But here's where it gets interesting. Modern life has made most unknowns pretty harmless, yet our brains haven't gotten the memo. Your prehistoric fear response kicks in when you're waiting for test results, starting a new school, or even choosing what to order at an unfamiliar restaurant. The same mental circuits that once protected us from saber-toothed tigers now make us anxious about text messages that haven't been answered yet. Fear of the unknown shows up everywhere in human behavior. People stick to the same coffee shop, rewatch old TV shows, and resist trying new foods. We create routines and rituals partly because they feel safe and predictable. Even something as simple as rearranging your bedroom furniture can feel unsettling at first. Then there's the supernatural angle. Ghost stories, urban legends, and monster movies all tap into our discomfort with uncertainty. Notice how the scariest moments in horror films aren't when you see the monster, they're when you hear footsteps but don't know what's making them. The unknown creature lurking just out of sight terrifies us more than any special effect. Different cultures have developed fascinating ways to deal with this fear. Some create elaborate myths to explain mysterious phenomena. Others build detailed religious systems that promise answers about death and the afterlife. Fortune tellers, astrologers, and psychics make good livings by claiming they can reveal hidden truths about the future. The weird part is that facing the unknown can also be incredibly exciting. People pay money to ride roller coasters, watch suspenseful movies, and travel to foreign countries. Adventure seekers actively hunt for uncertain experiences. Apparently we can enjoy fear when we choose it, and know we're relatively safe. Scientists have discovered that some people handle uncertainty better than others. They call it uncertainty tolerance, and it varies wildly between individuals. High-tolerance people become explorers, entrepreneurs, and artists. Low-tolerance folks prefer stable careers, detailed plans, and familiar surroundings. Neither approach is wrong. They're just different strategies for dealing with an unpredictable world. Let's not forget how uncertainty affects learning and growth. Every skill you've ever developed started with not knowing how to do it. Walking, reading, driving, cooking, all began in the uncomfortable territory of the unknown. The people who push through that initial fear of not knowing tend to learn more and experience richer lives. Technology has created some interesting new flavors of unknown anxiety. Social media gives us instant access to global information but also exposes us to constant uncertainty about world events, other people's opinions, and our own social status. We can know more than ever before, yet somehow feel less certain about everything. Research shows that our brains actually prefer predictable bad news over uncertain outcomes. Given the choice between definitely receiving a mild electric shock or maybe receiving a stronger one, most people choose the certain shock. We'd rather know something unpleasant is coming than wonder what might happen. The business world has figured out how to exploit our fear of uncertainty. Insurance companies sell peace of mind about unknown disasters. News channels keep us glued to screens by suggesting important developments might happen at any moment. Even simple things like limited time offers work by creating uncertainty about future availability. But maybe the most important thing about fearing the unknown is recognizing when it helps versus when it hurts. A healthy respect for genuine unknowns like checking strange medical symptoms or being cautious in dangerous situations makes perfect sense. Letting fear of uncertainty paralyze you from trying new experiences or making necessary changes. That's when the old survival instinct works against modern life. The human brain's relationship with uncertainty reveals something deeper about how we navigate existence. Every major decision involves stepping into unknown territory, yet somehow we keep making choices and moving forward. Speaking of choices and moving forward, there's something fascinating about how all this questioning and uncertainty fits into the bigger picture of human thinking itself. Here's a question that might blow your mind. Will philosophy ever actually end? Like, will we reach a point where every big question gets answered and philosophers just pack up their books and find new jobs? The short answer: not likely. And here's why that's actually amazing. Every time we think we've solved something huge, it's like opening a door that leads to 3 more locked rooms. Take consciousness, for example. We've mapped the brain better than ever before, but now we're asking even weirder questions. Can we upload minds to computers? Do octopuses dream? What happens if we merge human brains with AI? The more we learn, the more bizarre the questions become. Technology keeps throwing curveballs at ancient philosophical problems. Aristotle never had to wonder if dating apps change what love means. Plato didn't stress about whether social media makes us more or less real. Every new invention creates fresh puzzles that would make old philosophers' heads spin. But here's the really wild part. Each generation basically reinvents philosophy from scratch. Your great-grandparents worried about atomic bombs ending the world. Your parents freaked out about the internet changing everything. Now you're dealing with AI, climate change, and gene editing. Same core questions about right and wrong, life and death, but dressed up in completely new clothes. Students often ask their philosophy professors, when will we finally know everything? The professors usually smile and point out something fascinating. The questions themselves evolve faster than the answers. We're not just trying to solve old puzzles, we're constantly discovering new ones we didn't even know existed. Science makes this even more interesting. Every breakthrough in physics or biology creates philosophical headaches. Quantum mechanics broke our ideas about reality. Genetics challenged our thoughts about identity. Space exploration made us rethink humanity's place in the universe. Each discovery is like adding new pieces to a puzzle that keeps getting bigger. Then there's the human factor. We're curious creatures who can't help but ask why and what if. Even if we somehow answered every current philosophical question, humans would probably just start wondering about the answers themselves. Why are the answers the way they are? What would happen if they were different? It's questions all the way down. Different cultures keep adding their own flavors to the mix too. Western philosophy dominated for centuries, but now we're learning from Eastern thinking, indigenous wisdom, and perspectives from every corner of the world. Each viewpoint brings fresh questions and challenges old assumptions. The conversation keeps expanding instead of narrowing down. Some philosophers actually argue that the questions matter more than the answers anyway. Wrestling with big ideas supposedly makes us better thinkers, more empathetic people, and wiser decision makers. If that's true, then ending philosophy would be like ending exercise because we got strong enough. Universities certainly don't seem worried about running out of material. Philosophy departments keep growing, and students keep signing up to torture themselves with impossible questions. Online forums buzz with debates about free will and consciousness. Podcasts dedicated to philosophical ideas attract millions of listeners. People clearly can't get enough of the confusion. The funny thing is that even asking "will philosophy end" is itself a philosophical question. We're doing philosophy while wondering if philosophy has a future. It's like asking if questions will ever stop existing while actively asking a question. The whole thing is beautifully circular. New fields keep emerging that blur the lines between philosophy, science, and technology. Bioethics didn't exist until we started playing with genes. Computer ethics became necessary when machines got smart. Space ethics is developing as we plan trips to Mars. Philosophy adapts and spreads into every new frontier humans explore. Maybe the real question isn't whether philosophy will end, but whether we want it to. A world where every mystery gets solved sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? Part of being human involves living with uncertainty, struggling with difficult questions, and never quite figuring everything out completely. Philosophy professors have job security, basically forever. As long as humans exist and can think, we'll probably keep asking the same fundamental questions that have puzzled people for thousands of years. We'll just keep asking them in new ways, with new examples, facing new challenges that previous generations never imagined. The questions that started this entire journey, why anything exists, whether we can trust our senses, what makes us human, these aren't going anywhere. They'll keep evolving, getting more complex, and spawning entirely new puzzles that we can't even imagine yet. Every answer philosophy provides seems to whisper the same thing. There's always more to discover, more to question, and more to wonder about. And honestly, that might be the most human thing of all.